Since this is a combination meeting, we have people in person, people virtually. I ask that you use your outside voice. Speak up so those who are attending virtually are able to hear. For those who are in attendance via Zoom, please make sure you stay on mute. Also, if you're connected via phone, please do not put us on hold in case there's any hold music that may disrupt the meeting. Anybody who's attending remotely, please, if you need to speak, unmute and just say, Mr. Chairman, this is, introduce yourself and I will recognize you. Once you're done speaking, please remute yourself. If you need some help, please feel free to text or email Jillian or Eldon, as they will be emailing their email and their phone and respond to your request. All members who are remote should have received emails with phone numbers. With that being said, let's open up in a word of prayer, and then we'll get the meeting started. Bow our heads. Father in heaven, our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we can come together and discuss ways that we can take care of the environment, take care of what you have put us in charge of. I pray that as we are here today, we use wisdom from above and not our own ambitions to make sure that we are taking care of your creation. We thank you for those who are able to make it and bring them here safely. For those who are not able to make it, Lord, I pray that you put your hands of protection around them as we all have different things going on this holiday season. We thank you for your love and your Son. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. And Nancy, please in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sir, we have one.
Yes, sir. You have a quorum present.
All right, and with that being said, just ask that everybody in the room, please mute your phones. We're going to go around the table and ask members to identify themselves and give them an introduction. And then I will ask Eldon to call on remote members to do the same. I will ask members of the audience here to identify yourselves. Remember to speak up. And then I'll come on members of public or remote. And so we'll start over here to my right and we'll work our way around.
Woody Henson, Westmoreland County.
Richard Stewart, 25th Senate District, half of Spotsylvania, Caroline, Essex, Middlesex, all of the Northern Neck, including King George.
Hillary Kent, House Delegate District 67, including all of the Northern Neck and a portion of Caroline.
Nancy Long, Caroline County.
Debbie Donahue, Rapidan County.
Brian Nickel, Orange County.
Keith Hodges, delegate for the 68th district, which is the Lower Basin, which is Gloucester, Matthews, Middlesex, King Queen, Essex, and King Queen.
Billion Falls Back.
Eldon James, Saturday.
Delegate Philip Scott, 63rd District, which covers Orange and Spotsylvania counties.
County and Harrisonville Board of Supervisors.
John Gerlach, Greenwich, City Council.
Kathy Bender, King George County.
Mike Frost, Fauquier County. Kevin Marshall, Spotsylvania County.
Aaron Rowland, I know the next one.
Gentlemen, staff, Howard, Carolina, for observation district.
Give the members who are remote, let's start with Cardi.
Yeah, I'm Cardi Yao. I am Board of Supervisors, Madison County.
David Lee. Okay, and Representative Senator Reed, James.
How's it going? My name is James Manitz. I'm here on behalf of Senator Bryce Reeves, who represents Virginia's 28th senatorial district, comprised of parts of Spotsylvania and Fauquier counties, as well as the entirety of Rappahannock, Orange, Greene, Culpeper, and Madison counties.
And Michael Flat Tire Weber.
That'd be me. So 61st District, Fauquier, Culpeper, and Rappahannock.
Pardon my joke, members. Michael is going to be the person who literally had a flat tire, and That's his story, he's sticking to it. David Lee.
Yes, good afternoon, David Lee, Board of Supervisors, Culpeper County.
And then, members of the audience who wish to stand up and identify themselves.
I'm Clemons with Rapidan Service. I'm Jeremy Hall, I'm with the Virginia Department of Health Office of Drinking Water. Wonderful, and Chip Boyles, George Washington Regional Commission.
Brian Heath, George Washington Regional Commission.
Matt Walker, County Administrator of Middlesex, here for my chairman, Don here.
Brent Munsinger, Friends of the Rapidan. Dwayne Roadcap, Office of Drinking Water, Virginia Department of Health.
Dave Bernas, GM CEO of Hampton Road Sanitation District.
Brian Mark, Spotsylvania County Utilities.
Mary Erie, Spotsylvania County Utilities.
Good afternoon, Weed and Cloe, Office of Water Supply with DEQ.
Right, Hannah Summers, also Office of Water Supply for DEQ.
Tommy Blackwell, former Commissioner of Revenue, Essex County, and a friend of the Rapidan.
Jason Vessel, I'm with Simon Richard Stewart.
Jerry Lasher, Assistant State Forester, Virginia Department of Forestry.
And let's see, let's jump back to a member who is joined remotely, Delegate Higgins.
Delegate Higgins, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Your microphone before trying to do that, but anyway, get Higgins District 30, Western Loudon and Fauquier.
We do, let's start with Michelle.
Hello, Michelle Edwards, Rappahannock Rapidan Regional Commission.
And Don.
Don McCowan, Piedmont Environmental Council.
Okay. And at this time, I'd like to call on Supervisor Nancy Long to welcome everybody to Caroline County.
Oh. It's not like the first time y'all have been here, but it is a beautiful spot. This is my favorite place for me. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Mr. Olajay, would you quickly walk us through the agenda and identify any changes that may be new?
Yes, sir. The only change in the agenda that was sent out is the consent agenda will only include items A and C. The year-to-date financial report is not complete on my part, and we will catch up for that in the spring. Everything is where it should be, but I don't have a written report to give you.
And so with that being said, I ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda items A and C excluding B.
So moved. Second.
Moved and properly second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Moving on to public comment. Is there anybody here for public comment in the room? Seeing none, we're gonna move to online. Anybody here for public comment online? Seeing none, we're gonna move on to item number 4. Follow-up report on the Rapidan River Water Advisory, Mr. Tim Clemons with RSA and Dwayne from PDH.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Clemons. I'm the general manager for the Rapidan Service Authority. Here to follow up on an item that I believe it's last meeting, Roadcap. And so it is dealing with an incident we had, very important incident we had back in late August, resulting in a pretty severe odor in the water supply that we had to deal with our customers. So I'll see if I can get this machine to work. This is just a, short report. We provided this recently to our customers in the Locust Grove area. Some of you have already heard it, that were there at that meeting that night. But it's very, very similar to that, so we're gonna do the same thing actually. So as I said, my name is Tim Clemons. I'm the general manager for the Service Authority. We're gonna go over different things such as the background, what happened exactly, what's next, what we're doing. I had other people at the last meeting that are not with me today, but, we'll cover this now. So, briefly, for those of you that don't know anything about RSA, Service Authority was organized as a regional service authority in 1969. At the time, it was done by the counties of Orange, Madison, and Greene. And each member county's board of supervisor appointed and still appoints representatives to serve on the RSA board. Our charter responsibility at that time was the Division of Water and Sewer Service. We currently serve just Madison and Orange counties. RSA provides service to over 5,000 homes and businesses within our service area. In Madison, water and sewer is primarily available within the town limits and just the area immediately surrounding that. In Orange County, we provide water service along Route 15 to down Gordonsville and Route 20 airport area. Sewer service is available in the town of Gordonsville. And on the eastern end of the Orange County, the Locust Grove area, which we have water and sewer service provided in the Lake of the Woods, Wilderness Shores, Somerset Farms, and then along the Route 3 corridor. Our customers are served by qualified team of professionals to interact with. And we hope cooperate regularly with state and regional authorities like the health department, EPA, Orange County, Madison County, and others. In our east service area, our team includes currently 5 licensed water operators along with 4 licensed wastewater operators. Vacuum sewer system staff, because we have a very unique sewer system there. Water distribution, collection system maintenance, and administrative staff there. We have 25 RSA staff dedicated full-time in the east service area, as well as additional support staff, administrative staff located in our west office. And like most of you know that deal with water and sewer, our licensed operators receive ongoing continuing education. So, a little bit about how we acquired Lake of the Woods. On November 1st, 1987, RSA acquired ownership of Lake of the Woods water and sewer system. The existing system then was well-based and impacted by taste and odor issues due to iron manganese, groundwater contaminants. The system now serves Wilderness Shores, Somerset, like I said, Farms, Germanna Community College, and more. In 1991, a 1.6 million gallon per day water treatment plant was put into service with the Rapidan River as the source. Today, the plant is known as the Wilderness Water Treatment Plant. And we are finishing an upgrade project, which we call phase 1A, that adds an additional 1 million gallon per day of treatment capacity. We began that project in 2022, and it's about 99% completed. Should be completed right after the first of the year, we hope. Phase 1B is upgrading our well water intake station. That is to be completed in the first quarter of 2025. You can see in the middle picture that's our plant area. We're fairly shoehorned in there. We don't have any available property to expand on that location. So we're looking already at future water treatment plant sites. The 1 million gallon per day addition we just did, you can see in the picture to the left, is a tall, mobile, in this case, membrane water treatment plant system that can be moved around if need be, or just stationary, which is what we have right now. We've been working with the health department on that. So to the right-hand side is the river intake area that I mentioned and that we actually had a problem at, so. Not change. Can you change that? I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
So timeline. Beginning on Saturday, August 17th, we experienced faults related to pump number 3 at the raw water intake on the Rapidan River. These were attributed to loose wire connection. We had electrical upgrades ongoing at that site because of installing larger pumps. And as part of that, temporary wiring was installed on August 19th, and the pump was returned to service. On August 20th, we had additional faults experienced with that pump. Pump failed, which my experience and our experience there, that's failed pumps are not uncommon, but in this case, we switched to another pump to continue providing water up to the water treatment plant and kept going about our business. On August 21st, our project engineer identified the temporary wiring as potentially inadequate and directed the contractor to investigate it and take corrective action if necessary. Later, our investigations determined that on August 20th, the wiring issue led to a catastrophic pump failure, which released 2 to 3 gallons of food grade mineral oil into our raw water supply, which we then pumped up to the plant, through the plant, out into the distribution system. The temperature resulting from that failure burned or scorched the oil, creating the odor we believe experienced by our customers. And it was an odor. Described it by many as WD-40, diesel, gasoline, a number of different things they described it as, but it certainly created an odor. So the temporary wiring I was talking about, you can see here, and circled in red, is installed between the intermediate disconnects we had and the wet well disconnects as part of this ongoing electrical upgrade. Temporary wiring is suspected as the cause of the pump failure. We believe that certainly is what caused the pump failures. Like I said, pump failures, while terribly inconvenient in this instance and very unfortunate to happen, at least in our experience, are not uncommon among water utilities. We have backup pumps in place for this. The food grade mineral oil in the pumps does not pose a threat to public health based on toxicology reviews, epidemiological monitoring, and sampling results. And since pump failures are not uncommon to us, and we had not previously ever caused an odor, had an odor related issue with it, we did not initially identify that as the potential cause for this event. As I said, on August 21st, our customers began reporting an odor associated with their water, described primarily as petroleum or WD-40. Staff at our plant also noticed the odor on site, initially assumed to be associated with construction activities nearby and around the area. Out of an abundance of caution, we contacted the BDH Office of Drinking Water and Orange County, and ultimately issued a do not use advisory while the source of the odor was being investigated. Sampling began on the 21st by EDM and DEQ. Initial screening tests indicated possible hydrocarbon contamination. This was later determined to be a false positive, but unfortunately that information was released to the public, which certainly caused concern. When it became clear that the issue would be lasting and impactful, Orange County issued a local state of emergency to facilitate a coordinated response, and a unified command made up of BDH, DEQ, Service Authority, Orange County, and the Rapidan Health Department, and a joint information team was established to work through this matter. RSA cooperated with the Health Department, Office of Drinking Water, conducting multiple rounds of sampling and testing through both independent state and then also private laboratories. All the testing throughout the event indicated that the water continued to meet federal and state drinking water standards, and the odor was starting to decrease. One caveat to that is, on meeting all the standards, we have been dealing with a disinfectant byproducts issue, acidic acid, for some time, and that, while It's not related to this incident. It is an area that we are outside of the drinking water standard. We're working on correcting that now. There were inspections along the river by multiple agencies. They found no cause for the incident, like a spill or pollution of some sort. Health officials reviewed databases and notified hospitals. We only alert for any potential symptomatic patients, and as far as I know, there were never any confirmed cases of illness caused by this event. Orange County coordinated water distribution, bottled water distribution, and shower facility access for folks that needed it. And regular updates were being provided to the public through press releases, social media posts across multiple county channels. And there was a dedicated incident webpage hosted by the Virginia Department of Health, which had a lot of information on it. RSA on the 24th, Saturday, after a lot of this testing, held a call with BDH, Office of Drinking Water, to discuss improving that advisory status from a do not use to a do not drink, due to continuing the water to meet federal and state standards. Following that call, immediately, we then experienced pump failures in our other two river intake pumps, number 1 and number 2, leaving us with no functioning pumps. BDH was immediately notified of that. We asked them to hold off on revising the do not use, do not drink until we can get a temporary pump on site. We did have pumps 1 and 3 pulled to repair that Saturday. Pump 2 was pulled beginning of the following week. The pump failure and the repair delayed the downgrade of the advisory, as I said, and we got a temporary pump in that evening, placed it in service. And at about 10 o'clock Saturday evening, put that pump in place and running, the water plant back to service. The advisory status was downgraded to do not drink, do not use. In many cases, that caused questions and concerns, but on Sunday and Monday, the 25th and 26th, RSA continued working with the health department, conducting additional rounds of sampling, testing, inspections that were done at both the water treatment plant and in the water distribution system. The odor and taste continued to improve, lessen at the plant, but it did linger still in the finished water. And we continued expanding our flushing efforts to try to eliminate the odor completely. During this time, the testing was expanded, widely expanded. By contaminants and an out-of-state taste and odor expert was identified in Texas who offered to help with this. BDH was working with that laboratory out there. Continued rounds of tests. Still found no cause for the odor at that point. So on Monday, the Rapidan Health Department lifted a recreational water advisory for the Rapidan River in that area. On Tuesday, the 27th of August, BDH and RSA our staff conducted another series of inspections, both the plant and the water distribution system. No objectionable odor or taste was found there. There was remaining odor found in 2 distribution locations which had not been used or flushed since the beginning of the do not use advisory. And so we continued flushing there and then throughout the rest of the system to get rid of any lingering odor. And since the water continued to pass federal and state standards and the odor was gone in nearly all the locations, we were allowed to lift the do not drink advisory at about 11:15 on the 27th. Following that advisory lift, Orange County continued, well, they lifted their local state of emergency at about 12:30, and then they continued distributing water throughout that day because they'd already started and it was planned. From the 28th through the end of the month, we continued flushing hydrants and addressing customer concerns. Our area manager personally visited many homes and addressed those concerns in person with our customers. And the weekend, complaints of taste and odor had reduced to no more than 1 per day. By September 2nd, we were not getting any more complaints. During this time, the health department continued to investigate the cause of the incident. working with the laboratory in Texas. Can you advance that? I'm sorry. So, post-incident, what happened? On September 4th, we inquired about the pumps with the repair facility over in Richmond area. And were notified by the pump repair vendor that the damage was much more extensive than a typical pump failure, and that he estimated approximately 2 gallons of mineral oil could have leaked from that first failed pump. We immediately notified BDH of this, as a potential lead in their investigation on the 4th of September. They continued their investigation, and the 13th of September, RSA was notified by BDH that the case noter expert was able to approximate the objectionable odor by heating that food grade mineral oil that was used in the pumps. They had got a sample from the repair shop of the oil that's used, and it was heated, and felt from that was the cause of the odor. So although the experimental ratio of the oil to water tested was greater than that would have been experienced during the real world event, the health department concluded that this was the probable cause of the odor. After reviewing the information they had, RSA agreed that in all likelihood, that is what caused this odor issue. The response to this incident was, like I said, multi-agency, involved in cooperation of the service authority, the Virginia Department of Health, Office of Drinking Water, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, Virginia Department of General Services Division of Consolidated Lab Services, the US EPA, the Rapidan Health District, and Orange County. I have to say that of all those agencies, they all pitched in well. They were very helpful to us, very supportive, and they were all working. Everybody was working pretty much around the clock trying to figure out the cause of this. Beginning on that evening of the 21st, we first were notified by customers of an odor. Meetings were held, often daily, with representatives from all these agencies trying to determine the cause. Ongoing analysis was being done in the laboratories by the service authority, the health department, DEQ, and VDM, all looking for the cause. DCLS provided very significant support analyzing various constituents. And the Rapidan Health District followed up the main reported illnesses, as I said earlier, see if they were connected to the incident. Orange County provided support in many areas. They, along with VDM, coordinated the issuing of bottled water to the affected RSA customers. The county also coordinated providing showering facilities and ensured timely release of new information as it became available. So, as I said, many people working many hours trying to get this figured out. From that, RSA received a notice of alleged violation from the health department on September 25th, 2024. The NOV outlined the event and described corrective actions the service authority should take. It allowed us 60 days to submit a comprehensive plan to develop and take action as listed below. Briefly, they wanted us to look at a listing of category and contributing factors that resulted in this, and how we could effectively respond to these observations and lessons learned, prevent a similar occurrence from ever happening again. To look at operational changes in our activities, the way we operate, the way we function at the water plant. We've done that. That included also updating our daily bench sheets and that are done by our operators. How we monitor for low water quality, odor, changes in our RSA's policies and procedures to ensure infrastructure improvements being done were closely monitored and overseen with a proactive construction inspection program, an ongoing and appropriate communication strategy with our customers to address public concerns with water quality, ensuring a responsive capital improvement plan to reduce the disinfection byproduct issue and to improve our ability to respond to taste and odor concerns, ensuring an effective emergency response plan, asset management plan, and other items that we felt might be important based on their investigative summary report. So one of the main things we have to do here is rebuild customer trust. And we know that takes time. We can lose it very quickly. It takes a long time to build it back, but we do respect and are willfully gonna comply with the BDH notice of alleged violation. We've already began meeting with the health department. We've had one meeting, we have another scheduled, I believe, next week. We did try to tell them that, we didn't need a notice of alleged violation, that we needed to do better. But we got that anyway, so. With that in mind, we have continued our efforts to update our infrastructure, to advance our quality control procedures and to improve our communications. Our customers are at the forefront of our thoughts as we work to improve our operations and rebuild their trust. To that, rebuilding trust with our infrastructure. Well, like I say, I don't think any utility provider would ever promise to avoid all future service interruptions. We are committed to taking whatever necessary steps and reasonable steps we can to reduce that chance. So immediately, we are completing our phase 1B upgrade using approved methods and materials, and we have increased our on-site inspection of the construction activities. Long-term, we're pursuing capital improvements to reduce the disinfection byproducts and to ensure that we're prepared to respond if any future taste and odor incident would happen. Again, we certainly hope that not be the case, but we do want to be prepared if it were to happen. As far as quality control, we know it's our primary duty to deliver safe, high-quality water to our customers. And while the water never failed to meet state and federal standards, we will strive to exceed those standards. On the immediate actions, we have revised our operator procedures in the event of a failed pump. We will investigate the cause prior to activating another pump. We will not turn on the second pump without having gone down to the river, wet well, taken samples, checked it for odor, checked it for water quality. We're gonna monitor the raw water on a regular basis for potential odor causing problems as it comes into the plant. I note that on our bench sheets. We'll continue to be responsive to our customer concerns regarding water quality. Long term, we're gonna work towards installing systems such as activated carbon filtration to improve water taste and deliver at all times. This will also address the ongoing disinfection byproduct exceedance that we're working on. From a communication standpoint, we understand that communicating is vital in an incident of any nature. So while we felt like during this that timely information was being disseminated by RSA, by Orange County, and certainly by the Virginia Department of Health, there are certain areas, always areas we can improve it, and we plan to do that. So immediately, we have what we call an alert system that sends out text and email notices. We're encouraging more registration to that so that you can get those. We're evaluating how to establish a social media presence. We don't have a public information officer or anybody like that that works for us. We're trying to see what it would take for us to get involved in all these social media platforms that are out there that people communicate on, and to hold public meetings. We had one town hall meeting regarding this, as necessary, and our board meetings on a monthly basis. Long term, we wanna get to the point where we can schedule regular exercises with these external partners we mentioned to train and be prepared, and to have our staff prepared to respond more effectively to any type of incident. Any type of incident in the future. One more, give her 2 things. So that was the response we had. Our closing thoughts and resources. We do encourage our customers to contact us with continuing questions and concerns. We have a form on our website that allows them to contact us that way. So that includes my presentation. If there are any questions, I will do my best to answer those.
Before I open up to questions, I would like to just provide some comments. Being chairman, I'm going to take chairman's privilege here. Supervisor Nickel and I have been neck deep in this issue since day one. We both represent that part of Orange County that was impacted by this. And so we've had many conversations with Tim, tried to wrap our heads around not only what happened, what can happen in the future to make sure this doesn't happen, best ways to make sure that communication is going out there. And so we have been involved since day one with this situation, and we are going to continue to be involved to make sure that some of these plans that RSA is putting out there are actually being fulfilled and looking for ways to make sure the funding is there. So I just want to thank Supervisor Dickel for that, and also thank Mr. Tim Clemons for his cooperation. And I was at the town hall that they provided for the community and engaged the community. And as you can imagine, people were not happy about their water not being of top-notch quality. And I think Tim handled himself extremely well and was able to engage the community. And so I just want to thank Tim for coming here today and providing that update. With that being said, I'll open up for any questions from the members. Yes, Dr. Young.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to know, based on what I'm hearing from you and what I read, there are two different timelines. So which one should we follow? The VDH timelines or the timeline that you just described here? Because there were some inconsistencies.
I'm not sure the inconsistencies man is talking about. VDH, I think, felt like we should have let them know sooner about the pump failures, and in hindsight, we should have.
Okay, so.
In hindsight, we should have, in hindsight, in a perfect world, we would have. But like I said, we've experienced pump failures before that never created a problem like this, and it just didn't.
Yeah.
Delegate Scott is also.
I'm sorry, I was just wondering about the two pump incidents that were not reported, and I'm assuming that maybe you couldn't report it then to the VDH because you were probably investigating.
Well, we had two, the first pump failure was on the 20th. We did not tell the VDH about that. We didn't think that it was important. We did, again, in hindsight. On the 24th, I believe it was, when the other two pumps failed, we notified VDH immediately. Because we were already talking to them about changing the advisory, and we said, we can't change it yet, we have no pumps.
And if I may add into that, right now, there is no requirement for some of these more routine incidents to be reported. As the gentleman said earlier, pump failures are a common occurrence. Kind of like an oil change, you know, if you don't change your oil or you don't do maintenance on your car, it's gonna start making noise, doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong, you just gotta put a little bit more oil in it, right? The oil light comes on. And so the oil light, so to speak, came on, they put on another pump. And you don't kind of report all those things to your mechanic when you go in to see the mechanic, but then sometimes that oil light will come on and it causes a catastrophic failure of the engine. And then you end up taking your vehicle into the mechanic, and so that's kind of what happened. And again, he's already said that going forward, pump failure, pump the brakes, assess what's going on before starting up another pump, so.
So the follow-up question I had in terms of the trust, you said that's the main thing you're working on. Outside of trust in the public, I know I've asked this question the last time that you were here. You talk about the one that has odors. So if anybody else could learn about what's odorless that the public would not know about, how would you go about addressing that? And that's for everybody to learn, like if you have odor and not odor. So how do you identify that you have an issue if you don't have any odor at all? That my question makes sense.
I may have to defer to Mr. Roadcap on that one, because he's more of a water specialist than I am.
Okay.
Hi, Dwayne from Roadcap with the health department. So you bring up a good point. If you can't see it, you can't smell it, how do you know whether it's okay or not? And essentially, in the drinking water program, what we do is we have about 80 contaminants that we regulate and routinely monitor. And some of the philosophy and thinking behind that is that if you're getting these 80 that you're evaluating correct, then, and you're treating for those, then the hundreds or thousands of other chemicals that are out there in the world that could be affecting your water that you can't see or you can't smell, that you're adequately treating those chemicals as well. So I think last meeting I gave an example of, lead in drinking water would be an example of you can't see it, you can't smell it. There's PFAS, polyfluoroalkyl substances is another example. A lot of the organic and inorganic chemicals you can't see or smell with the drinking water. And so the way that the national program works is we focus in on treatment techniques and certain chemicals. And if we're doing a good job there, we expect and anticipate that everything else is going to be okay with the water supply. But with that being said, it does bring up the point that if there were a spill or release of which we don't know about, and that you can't sense or smell in the drinking water, that poses a risk on how long it would take to find that. And so there's a lot of other things that go on in environmental monitoring that our sister agency DEQ does to help with pollution and releases and requirements to inspect and report. So hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from anybody online? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, we have Hampton Roads Sanitary District Innovation SWIFT program. Bernas, General Manager.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Senators, Delegates, Commissioners. Really happy to be here today. Again, my name is Jay Bernas. I'm with HRC. So I'm going to be giving everyone an update on SWIFT, but I'm also going to sneak in about 5 minutes out of here that we're working on. So if you're not familiar with HRC, we're just outside this commission. I think Middlesex is the only county that we're in our service area. But we serve 20 cities and counties, 1.9 million people, over 20% of all Virginians. We're the 14th largest wastewater utility, and that's all we do is wastewater. We have a combined capacity to treat 225 million gallons a day. You can barely see the stars on the map. Our blue stars are our major treatment plants. Our little green stars are our smaller treatment plants that we own and operate. Our service area is approximately 5,000 square miles, which is about the size of London. So before I talk about SWIFT, and I know some of y'all may have heard of it, but I want to talk to you about why we're doing SWIFT. So in coastal Virginia and eastern Virginia, there are two primary regulatory drivers: Clean Water Act compliance for sanitary sewer overflows. And before I talk about it, note that in Hampton Roads, we have a separate sewer system, unlike DC, Alexandria, Richmond, where they have a combined sewer system. We have a separate sewer system. And also, I'm sure you're familiar with the Chesapeake Bay Restoration, the TMDL, and for the legislators in the room, the 2021 legislation, the Enhanced Nutrient Security Program, the ENR program. So those are the two main regulatory drivers. And I also need to talk about EPA's integrated planning framework, because SWIFT has a dual compliance benefit. And so in EPA's integrated planning framework, what they allow communities to do is prioritize environmental projects that make the most sense, because they understand that communities don't have unlimited money to spend on environmental projects. And so we were able to convince EPA that and we have probably the best integrated plan in the country. And with SWIFT as the cornerstone. So again, because SWIFT has a dual compliance benefit, this is what our integrated plan says. We have to spend $400 million on high priority wet weather capacity projects to remove 69% of our overflow volume by 2040. And the reason why that's important, that costs $400 million. To get that remaining 31% out was going to cost $1.4 billion. And because we have a separate sewer system, we treat 99.99% of the wastewater that comes to us. And so does it make sense to spend $1.4 billion on 0.01%? And so EPA agreed. They saw that we had other environmental priorities, and so they let us do SWIFT. So instead of spending that $1.4 billion on that, we're spending it on SWIFT. And so if you haven't heard of SWIFT, it has a number of great benefits. You take our already highly treated effluent from our wastewater treatment plants, we run into advanced water treatment, which we're calling swift water. And we pump that water into the Potomac aquifer, the primary aquifer in Eastern Virginia. And by doing so, it has so many benefits. Again, from a regulatory perspective, we've significantly reduced the nutrients going into the Chesapeake Bay. Because we're treating it to such a high quality and pumping it into the aquifer, that's the prime regulatory driver that checks that Chesapeake Bay Tamdale box. But look, it also creates that sustainable groundwater supply. And I'll talk a little bit about one of these other benefits. Reduces land subsidence, potentially slows land subsidence or stops it, and protects from saltwater contamination. So what I don't want y'all to walk out of here is saying, oh, we're putting raw wastewater into the aquifer. Some people think, no. We have already highly treated effluent from our advanced wastewater treatment plant. And then we're gonna run it through this advanced water treatment process that has 6 stages of advanced treatment. The water comes out so pure from this process that we actually have to add minerals back into the water before we pump it back into the aquifer to match the geochemistry of the aquifer. And if anybody wants to come see our Swift Research Center, we have a demonstration facility where we've been pumping 1 million gallons a day since 2018. It's in Southern Virginia. We'd be happy to have you. And so the significant reduction in nutrients, again, this is one of the primary regulatory drivers for SWIFT. And it's essential for the Commonwealth to meet the WIP 3 goals for 2026. So in terms of total nitrogen discharge, if you compare 2021 to 2028, we are going to reduce total nitrogen by over 70% and total phosphorus by over 50%. But if you go all the way back to 2010, we are reducing our total nitrogen discharge by 90%. So this project is significant in the amount of pounds of nutrients being discharged into the bay. But it's expensive. And so thank you for the legislators that approved the $400 million in WQIF in the last 5-year budget. A significant amount of that is going to pay for SWIFT. But through 2030, we still have a lot of need. That was just the biennial budget, so almost $1 billion of WQIF eligible cost for this. So what are you getting for that money? Of course, you're gonna get that nutrient reduction, but the beauty of the SWIFT project is that there's so many more benefits. Many of y'all know that the Potomac aquifer is being depleted. Those two, where the lowest circles are, those cones of depression. The one is the Franklin paper mill, and the other one is the West Bay, is where a meteor hit the mountain. Mountain of the Bay, like millions of years ago, so you'll see that in various strong paper mills. My father-in-law actually he was drawing when he first started there. He said 43 million gallons a day back in the 70s. And so it's not surprising that the U.S. Geological Survey estimates that the Potomac aquifer has declined by over 200 feet in the last 100 years. Okay.
Hang on. It's moving here, but not for you.
All right.
Are you on the right? Oh,
Oh, too many.
are you clicking?
No. I think it was a delay. There was a lag. You go back.
Okay.
One more. Yeah. And so these are model results using DEQ model. Red's bad, blue's good. So the model results on the left. Again, you can see where those paper mills are. If we do this, right? But because of the transmissivity of the aquifer, when we pump water in Hampton roads, you see that impact all the way up to Northern Virginia and Northeast North Carolina. But also one of the things that happens as the water levels have declined, those clay layers compact. And so that's what's causing Hampton roads to sink. Sea levels rising, Hampton roads is sinking. And so the graph on the left shows a graph that U.S. Geological Survey prepared where it shows a higher rate of land sinking around where the paper mills are, but it's everywhere. across eastern Virginia. And so the idea is, and you're seeing a lot of recurrent flooding in Norfolk and other areas. The idea is if we can pump water back into the aquifer, maybe we can slow or stop that land subsidence. And there's already evidence to suggest that that could be true. So, and how are we gonna know it's true? Well, we're gonna install more superstations. These are called US geological superstations. Basically, they're extensometers. A metal rod goes down to bedrock. There's an instrument at the top and measures the land surface elevation. And so thankfully, DEQ funded the one in West Point that was installed. I think it should be operational in the next few months. And HRC is gonna install another one on the peninsula near our SWIP facility in Newport News. There's already one we installed in Suffolk, and then we've got one in Paper Mill, another one in Isle White. So we'll have 5 to measure whether or not we can, if we can slow or stop land subsidence. If you think about it, if we're able to slow or, I mean, we can't control sea level rise. We're not gonna stop the glaciers from melting, right? But maybe we can slow or stop land subsidence. The city of Norfolk is building a flood wall for $2.6 billion just for the city of Norfolk. And so if this can help slow or stop, and so land subsidence, they estimate is 1/3 of sea level rise that's impacting beach roads. So, but that's not all. So this is a cross section of the Potomac Aquifer. Blue is freshwater, red saltwater. This is a simulation basically showing if you're continuing to pull water out of the aquifer, that pressure gradient is pulling that salt water in. So once you have saltwater contamination into the aquifer, it's potentially irreversible. So, and I know you had a bunch of chloride meters monitoring around. Okay, so now an update on construction. So the first plant underway is called our James River Swift. This is located in Newport News in the Riverview Farm Park. It's a $630 million project. TN reduction, total nitrogen reduction, 200,000 pounds, total cost is 13,000 pounds. It's 57% complete. This project should be done by April 2026. This is some construction pictures. This is what a $600 million construction project looks at a wastewater plant. Lots of concrete, lots of staging, a lot of work going on, a lot of jobs created too. Economic development. Okay, thank you. Another project, it's not exactly SWIFT, but related. If you're familiar with Newport News and in Suffolk, the Monitor Merrimack Bridge, we have a wastewater plant called our Boat Harbor plant at the north end of the Monitor Merrimack Bridge tunnel. Well, that plant doesn't do nutrient reduction. And it is so tight on that site, we have tanks stacked on top of other tanks. So basically, there's no room to do advanced nutrient reduction improvements. So we had this crazy idea, let's build a pump station and pipe that wastewater across the James River, send it to our Nansman plant, expand that plant, and that will be the SWIFT plant. And so we did that. In fact, the portion of that northern portion where that channel was, that was a world record horizontal directional drill that they did this past summer that Bernas did. So it was pretty, I was out there, it's the most amazing thing. 160 people low ground, they went on both ends and somehow they met. And they connected and they went back and forth and built all the whole pipe. It was the craziest thing, but it was a world record. So it was pretty neat. But look at the total nitrogen reduction for the costs, over 600,000 pounds. So this is why we really, HRC was the one that really pushed conveyance projects to be funded by WQIF because it's a very cost-effective way to do it, especially in this case where you have a plant that can't do a 15 MGD plant that can't do advanced nutrient reduction, but we can take it to another plant that does. And so this is another WQIF eligible project. This project should be done by 2026. Here's construction. So that's on the left shows how they had the barge and how they had the pipe. They've used 1 mile of pipe. There's a 1 mile horizontal directional drill, I think of 52-inch pipe, 48-inch pipe. And they pulled it all in 24 hours. And on the right side, this is where they are. This is the latest drawing of where the pump station will be. That's going to pump it all the way across. So this is our Nansman. This is a $1 billion project. It's being done in 2 phases. The first one is the advanced nutrient reduction improvements and expansion. You take that Boat Harbor flow. The second part will be the SWIFT project. So the first phase will be done by 2025. Again, WIP 3 has to be done by That's the 2026 is the first compliance year for Chesapeake Bay, TMDL. And then 2029 is when the SWIFT component of this project. So here's some pictures of the tanks that they're building for the advanced nutrient reduction. And this is also where our SWIFT Research Center is. If anybody wants to come take a tour, we don't have to be all tour. Okay, so that's SWIFT, but now I'm going to take 5 minutes since you're all right here to tell you about a new initiative that we're looking at. So many people don't know that HRC is one of the most innovative wastewater utilities in the country. It's one of the reasons we're able to pull off a project as big as SWIFT. And so our new idea is, how can we make Hampton Roads a water technology innovation ecosystem? We think Silicon Valley is for tech, Research Triangle is for medical. Where is it for water technology? Why can't it be Hampton Roads with HRC as the anchor? So a couple of months ago, engineers from Samsung came from South Korea. They came to look at our patents that we had potentially licensing for our plants. So it got us, it's like, HRC is a community leader. We exist because of the community. How can we leverage our innovation, our expertise, and turn it into something bigger, have a bigger positive community impact? And so we're working with the Hampton Roads Alliance, Hampton Roads Executive Roundtable, our incubator on pursuing this idea. If you're familiar with the state of the region that ODU does, they highlighted the water technology cluster. And guess what? The average annual wage is $91,000 a year, the third highest, higher than clean energy, higher than cyber, higher than advanced manufacturing. And in fact, 38,000 jobs, double the amount of port jobs. So there is a potential that water technology in Hampton Roads could make a lot of sense. And so in fact, we last week we are engaging ODU. They are interested in highlighting SWIFT in their next state of the region, but we also want to do an economic impact study. Again, WQIF spending is technically only for nutrients, but there's a bigger ROI there with our SWIFT project. What's the value of having a sustainable groundwater supply? What's the value of slowing or stopping 1/3 of sea level rise? There has to be an economic value. And so why does HRSD do so much research? Well, we do a lot of research to help keep our ratepayer bills low. On the right are some of our patents and our licenses that we have, because at the end of the day, regulations drive innovation. At one point about a decade ago, we were facing $7.8 billion to deal with those two regulations. And so that really pushed us hard to think about, well, we got to think differently. Just think about how innovative SWIFT was. That was a concept and an idea. Now, 10 years later, we are under construction. So all of our technologies right now, our licenses and patents revolve around process intensification. Really revolve around doing more with less, smaller footprint, in the effort of reducing O&M costs and reducing capital costs, but also reducing environmental footprint. And so in our R&D department, we probably have the smartest, most brilliant wastewater engineer in the country. His name is Dr. Charles Bott. We have 23 staff, 5 PhDs, 8 people working on their PhDs. We have millions in research grants. This is our SWIFT Research Center. It won the 2018 US Water Prize. This is the one that you can come visit. This is where we have the 1MGD demonstration facility. We also do a lot of pilot scale treatment trains that we test a lot of things. So if you want to talk about PFAS, I can tell you about some of the PFAS work we're doing. But I do want to just talk about one patent in particular, because this is the most revolutionary patent for the wastewater industry for nutrient reduction. So we were able to figure out how to leverage this relatively new bacteria called Clemons. And if you look on the right side, this is what the little red bacteria is. They grow on this little honeycomb plastic device. So it took a decade worth of research. And what this bacteria can do is a shortcut nitrification. And what that means is we can reduce nitrogen with 50% less power, 80% less chemicals. So we have the first plant in the world in York County that has this at scale. And what it means is it saves $1 million a year in operating costs, but $100 million in capital. So a huge, huge revolutionary project. It's all of the talk around the country, around the world. We have the second and third plants in the world going in. One will be the Newport News SWIFT plant at James River, and the Nansman SWIFT plant in Southern. We're also one of only 5 utilities that I know of that is standing up a new AI group, calling it digital water. We have someone internally that got their PhD in this specifically for wastewater. They're one of the first digital twins in North America. Basically, that means that we can optimize and control one of our wastewater plants with AI. So we're working on that. And then. Oh, and then this last thing, if you're not familiar, have y'all heard of the mega region? So it's the Hampton Roads Chamber and the Richmond Chamber combined to create RBA 757. And what they want is they want to create the world's next global internet hub. You've got 3 undersea cables, 2 coming from Europe, 1 coming from South America. They're landing in Virginia Beach, going through Hampton Roads, going through Richmond on their way to Northern Virginia. And so what this new group, this mega region group wants to do is, well, how can we turn this into the next global internet hub? So a couple of weeks ago, I was at a conference talking to Google and Meta and Amazon. So the trifecta for data centers is power, which Dominion Energy is looking at small modular reactors. They're looking at wind turbines, fiber, which is that fiber line going through, but the third leg, water. And so if you look at that map, east of Richmond, that's essentially HRC service area. So we're trying to position ourselves to make sure that if they need recycled water, like Loudoun County, where they have purple pipe water, that we are positioned that we can help there. Or what if they use water out of the ground from Swift? We're recharging the aquifer. If you think about the Potomac aquifer and the fact that we're recharging it, it's not only our storage device. So if we can convince DEQ that, hey, Swift is creating this sustainable groundwater supply, that maybe these data centers don't have to use potable water. Maybe DEQ can open up groundwater to allow industrial wells again. And that instead of having to build distribution systems, they can just drill a hole, get water out of the ground, take advantage, another ROI for the WQIF dollars, HRC ratepayer element that they're spending on Swift. So there's a huge economic development potential for Swift as well. And I know there's been some General Assembly bills where, they don't want data centers soaking up, all the potable water. Maybe they could use Swift water. Maybe they could use recycled water. So either way, we're trying to position ourselves for this. We know that this is coming. We know that there are groups trying to do this, and we want to make sure we're. And so just in summary, again, Swift has so many great benefits. Thank you again to the legislators for the $400 million in WQIF, but we have more requests coming. And we'll keep you posted on how our water tech innovation ecosystem idea pans out. So with that, I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Open up to any members. Yes.
I'm gonna be first, and so the delegates are in the room. So I like your program. I would like to visit your plant, especially for our service authority. My second question, I've absorbed this presentation, but you just made a comment about the SWIFT program for data centers. How about helping King George be, since we're the tip of the feather, to recharge the aquifer from the upper portion? Just throwing it out there, since there's a lot of delegates and the senators in the room to help, help this, but prioritizing some areas that have to go to service water and might not have all available funds to be able to do it before economic development. And I know that might be a controversial statement, but it's important to King George.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I've heard about the issues there. Unfortunately, right outside our district, and I do know that there are studies about, can you do Swift in other parts of Virginia? Does it make sense? I think from our perspective and the feedback we've given, you have to have scale. I don't know how big your plants are there, but the plants we're doing are 15 MGDs costing us 600 million, 34 MGDs, $1 billion. So these are like large scale, big dollar projects. So it has to be big.
I got that, but if there's a push to the regional water supply plan and regionalism, this could be a way to do it on the other spectrum, because as you know, a lot of data centers are coming down, and now I see kind of why, even more. But it would be important, you could do a vital thing to that region, help with jobs, economic development, but you would also be recharging the aquifer from the other end. So I'm just putting it out.
Well, that's why we're only doing 2 Swift plants, not 5, because we actually can do 5. Maybe the furthest up north is Williamsburg. But yeah, it's just expensive. We had to cut it back. Yes.
Are you able to treat PFAS in the SWIFT program? What you're recharging with, is it PFAS free?
That is brilliant question. So when we started this study in 2014, nobody was talking about PFAS. But because we have very, very smart engineers and we have a multi-barrier treatment train, we had anticipated similar types of compounds. And that's why we have 6 different treatment trains. So like if Floxid doesn't get it, then ozone gets it. If that doesn't get it, the AC gets it. And so in our case, in our treatment train that we have already designed and then constructing, we're using GAC. So GAC will 100% soak up PFAS. It's just a matter of cost. And so there's only 2 technologies that are proven to get rid of PFAS. One is GAC, the other one ion exchange. And so in fact, GAC is probably going to be one of the largest operating costs for most water utilities. And the supply demand curve is going to become so uneven because I don't think that there's enough for GAC for all the people to meet the PFAS regulations in the next 5 years. So in fact, in our research center, one of the things we're testing is ion exchange as a polishing to GAC to help the GAC last longer. So at HRC, we have a bunch of engineers that have an MBA. So we're all about, well, what's the business case? So does it make sense for the capital cost to put in ion exchange after GAC, so the GAC lasts longer and saves us much more money? So so we're doing all that kind of research. We have probably the largest municipal lab on the East Coast, and we're going to be in the next probably 3 years, going to be able to do our own PFAS testing in-house. And we actually will be offering that to other localities as well, because we have something called the Municipal Assistance Program, where we do things like that for cost. So that's all coming down. But just to put in case the legislators are in the room, we are working and trying to figure out how we can deliver either a virgin GAC or a GAC regeneration facility to Virginia. Because if you think about how much coal Virginia used to have in the ports and the rail, that is the same starting material that you need for GAC. It's a huge business opportunity for someone if they can get into the GAC business, because from what we understand, the supply demand equation is so uneven. HRSD has actually in our capital program in 2030, it's been $265 million building a rotary kiln to regenerate our GAC, and the payback is like 7 to 10 years for a $265 million project. That's a huge business opportunity. We could do a public-private partnership, so it's not just us, it's Newport News Water. So you'll start to see, I think the first speaker talked about GAC. I mean, the cost of GAC for the supply demand equation is just going to go. So all the water utilities are getting that in the country are going to use it.
If I can go back to one of the earliest points you made, the 43 million gallons a day being extracted for.
Oh, yeah.
I've not ever heard this before. Are you suggesting that maybe that is the cause of the sublimation that's been happening?
I think it's a combination. So it's that. So they've really gone down in terms of their uses. I think they're down to like less than 10. I don't know the latest numbers in terms of their permits and stuff, but they were at 43 for a long time. But it's so 20% of folks in Eastern Virginia rely on groundwater as their primary source. So it's not just the 2 paper mills, it's all the withdrawals, because I didn't go into details of what the Potomac offers like, but it does not get naturally recharged. The only recharge area is along the fall line because it's a confined aquifer. So that's why when people think when it rains, that water is going into, no, it only comes in at the fall line, and we're taking more out than is being replenished. And so that's why the water levels have gone down by over 200 feet. So I don't want to just say it's this the paper mills. There's a lot of wells.
That 43 million gallons, that is significantly more than most of the other uses.
Yeah, and I think in 2016, but like I said, I think that was in the 70s. I think, I don't know what like I said, I think they're probably down in the 10s now, but BEQ, I think in 2016 or something like that, actually went back and cut existing permittees. Some they cut actually below, so James City County Service Authority, they actually cut them below their current usage. And so, so because who's replenishing the aquifer? If you're taking more out than is getting replenishment, that's all DEQ can do is reduce the amount being taken out. So they did that like in about 2016. And Director Paler, I remember seeing him do a talk and he said the number one thing that keeps him up at night was groundwater. Groundwater and the lack thereof. And so, yeah, it's a serious issue, but a lot of people don't see it. Unless you're like scientists, you know what I mean, or you understand the groundwater levels and things like that, so. Cause like in Hampton Res, you know, they're getting it from surface water, so they don't see that as an issue. But it's a huge issue.
Any other questions?
There's no questions, but really just a comment. Thank you so much. I've been a fan of the SWIFT project since it started. And have been watching it develop, but just how it's evolved over time and what you've done to take it to the level that it is now. And, you know, that's to say, you know, for every negative, there's a positive. That's why I always look at things. And what you've done here is you've taken a negative and taken the challenges and you turned it into a way to solve a problem. You're turning it into economic development, a new industry cluster, creating jobs, economic development, and it's just a win-win for the Commonwealth. And it's a challenge. I know, you know, King George is a challenge too, but unfortunately, they're inside of the HRSD, you know, area. But I know if you could do it, you would. But you know, you're really stepping up and solving a problem for the Commonwealth. Have you looked at, as far as the economic impact to the region, as far as jobs and economic activity and done? I mean, I would love to see that.
So we are working with ODU on that. And so when we presented this to them, they were like, it just kind of blew their mind because they were like, there's so many threads, right? They can say, just on the regulatory piece, we have estimated that we've saved the region $5 billion. And we just sent them all that documentation, but then there's also the other piece of all the jobs we've created with all the construction. But then there's the other piece, like, what's the value of having a sustainable groundwater supply? And now, then you just pull water out of the ground instead of building. So like, there's so in their minds, it's just so mind blowing to them that, but they want to help us tell the story. Because as you can see, this can be like, there's so many dimensions to this, and it's kind of like, it's kind of hard to like narrow in on what I wanted to talk to y'all today. But they're gonna help us with that, like. Okay. Is it just on the regulatory compliance piece that we saved, or is it on, you know, the lands of science piece? Like, what is the thread that they want to go down? So even for like the state of the region, what's the best story that would resonate with the most people? Because there's so many storylines, and so it's a great question. It's going to be a very complicated answer. It's probably going to be multiple studies, but I think it's got to help tell the story, because you know, if we're going to the General Assembly asking for 962 million of WQA, they're like, right? But if it says like, yeah, but it's generating billions of XYZ, you know what I mean? It like helps tell the story. So,
I mean, because as far as an economic driver, it's tremendous. And how do you measure that? And then put it in the budget somehow. I mean, it's gonna be complicated.
Yeah.
You know, water, it's a tremendous asset for us. It's also a liability. Whether it's groundwater, flooding, whatever, but you know, we can turn it into an asset of industry clusters and create a tremendous number of jobs.
And I appreciate your comments, though.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Senator Stewart, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I too been a fan of your project for a while and been watching it since its inception, because I'm one of those senators who've been working about this since I got elected. And I've watched the depletion of the and looked at the causes, and it's not just the paper mills, it's others in Southern Maryland. There's a lot that we kind of need to address. But it was interesting to me because you mentioned this as a method to a sustainable groundwater supply. And I know you all are putting back in 1 million gallons a day in the current one, correct? So how much do we need to actually put in to make it a sustainable groundwater supply based upon the current withdrawals that we have?
So that's an amazing question. So right now, we are putting in 50 million gallons a day. No, not today, but I mean, when these projects are done, it'll be 50 million gallons a day.
50 at the conclusion of all.
Yeah, by 2029, 50 million gallons a day we'll be able to go into. So what our modeling shows is the way DEQ measures how they do their permitting is through critical cells. And so with the 50 million gallons, we can eliminate 75% of the critical cells. So there's different measures, right? So we can eliminate 75% of the critical things. So we looked at, well, what if we do the next split plant, which is in Norfolk called our VIP plant? And that plant's probably gonna be like $1 billion. And so we ran the model, put the water in, we only get 7 more critical cells out, only 82%. So in our mind, that's why we posted on that project. Because for $1 billion, only to eliminate 7 critical cells, like, but that's model world. So one of the things we are very careful with, and we've been working with, when the first drop goes in the ground in 2026, we have the right groundwater monitoring system in place. Because we need to know the impacts, because we know what the model says, we know what USGS says, but what actually happens out into the aquifer system. So we want to make sure we get a lot of good baseline data, because to your point, well, maybe it's not enough. Maybe it is worth spending another $1 billion in the next facility. So we've already acquired the land, we're doing preliminary design, but there's no plans to do that, spend that $1 billion on that project. So what we want to do is take a wait and see approach. So let's look at the data. Does it make sense? And so that's a great question. So we're not sure. Basically, model says maybe not, model says maybe 15 billion is good enough, but who knows? So that's a great question.
Thank you, sir.
Feel free to be brief on this one for me. At the places where you're pumping water back in, how much of that is kind of creating a swell where you're reintroducing water? And what extent is the aquifer kind of just coming up at the same time?
So we get that question a lot. I'm not a hydrogeologist, but from what our hydrogeologist says, because the way the aquifer is constructed, or how the clay layers are, it all kind of moves up like a giant table. So it's not like where the well is, you're gonna see like a lump where the well is, especially like the one that we drilled, for our demonstration facility. You don't see that. What you see is, one is the extensometer, which is maybe 1,500 feet away. When we pump water in, the ground level rises, and it's 1,500 feet away. So that's what we're expecting to see, is like ideally like a more uniform rise, not like, hey, this house is like this, and like, you know what I mean? But again, I'm not a hydrogeologist, that's how our hydrogeologist explains it. Because again, the Potomac aquifer is probably, it goes down to about 1,500 feet. I think the top of the layer in some areas like 500 feet. And so it's a confined aquifer, and so the idea is like it all kind of go there. But it's a great question.
Question similar to what you just answered, but I've got some places in my county in Spotsylvania where the water table, when it has gotten high, it's came out the ground. I mean, I've had water when it's not raining running into the Rapidan River, happened right at the Fergusburg Country Club years ago. Water started running out the hillside to the river and washed the hillside out. How do you prevent that from happening when you're putting water back in the ground?
So like I said, there are superficial aquifers above the Potomac aquifer, and that's probably what's happening up there.
This wouldn't push water into that aquifer?
No, because it's confined, it's below the top of the Potomac aquifer layer. But yeah, that's why I said I didn't go into details. Like they USGS has, and it's different in every area, but there's different layers of superficial aquifers. But again, that's why Potomac aquifer is being depleted, is because it's confined. All that water you're talking about doesn't even make it through the top layer down into, where the Potomac is. So that's just another example of like how we know that that's a superficial.
Good.
But it's a great question too, because like, that's why I think in Hampton Roads, a lot of people think that, and it's intuitive, right? When it rains, that it's gonna fill the groundwater up, but like, that's not how our geology is in Eastern Virginia. The Potomac is a confined aquifer, so it doesn't get naturally. So.
Any other questions? I'd just like to make one comment before we move on. Jay, thank you very much. I was looking back and sharing with the chairman that on December 3rd, 2014, 10 years ago, this meeting.
Oh, that's when we started this.
Ted Hennepin was here to talk about investigating aquifer recharge as a strategy to address water supply needs. And he laid out this concept, which wasn't clearly fully developed because nobody really had any idea then how much it can be able to do. And there was a fair amount of skepticism around the room, whether you could really do that. I know, I think, our former chairman was at a meeting with me, we drank some of the water, so it is drinkable.
It is. Guess what it tastes like? It tastes like.
I just.
I should have brought some.
Oh,
Now you gotta count. Now
you didn't know?
I do have one question before we move on to the next thing. I mean, it was brought up about doing something like this in King George, some of these other localities, and sheer scale of one of these facilities, but the more that you do it, the better you become at reproducing. Is there a plan to try to figure out a scalable way to do additional smaller scale facilities at different areas that kind of do the same thing, but utilizing more resources to accomplish the end goal?
I mean, I think that's a great question. We haven't been thinking about that because, we've been really focused on the current plan, but that is an interesting strategy in terms of, we've learned so much from our demonstration facility, and I'm sure we're gonna learn from these facilities, that if the opportunity presents itself, that, so one of the things that we already know is that that treatment train system produces great water. But that's a great idea. I think we need to start thinking about that in terms of having a long-term vision and strategy, because I do know that there is potential in other parts of Eastern Virginia that it could be feasible. So, and people can learn from what we've done, 100%. So
King George looks to be a partner in that.
Yes. We are at the fall line, so.
Oh, okay, so and probably one of the bigger things we've learned is well design. And not getting wells clogged, so we've had our little 1 MGD well get clogged, and so we've learned a lot from that. So there's so many things we've learned from our demonstration facility we've had since 2018, so.
That's why I'd love to visit it, and that's why I was bringing that up, is I really enjoyed this presentation, but I'm thinking of outside the box of opportunities that maybe for another area to really do it for the whole region, or the whole mega region.
And you can ask much smarter people than me, like our hydrogeologists, like those very detailed technical questions that I don't know about, but yeah, we have them all at our tour.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chairman, I have one last.
Yes, sir.
A silly question. If this water is clean enough to drink, why is your well getting full?
It was, something about how the screens were designed. So the way the wells are designed, they have these screens and they were getting, clay in the screens. And it's about, maintenance and backwashing frequency. So it wasn't the quality of the water, it was more about like we learned a lot more about the well design. In terms of how the screening should be done, mechanical screens and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
In reference to the data centers, when you're looking forward, they probably have certain requirements for their, potable water and certain things. Are you looking at those requirements while you're moving forward in your next phases so that you don't have to go back and try to fit their requirements if they decide to have some kind of alliance or allegiance with you?
So this is relatively new idea for us in the last couple of months. And so just like last couple of weeks ago, we're talking to the data center people to understand what they're looking for. So, because one of our, I'm not getting into detail, but one of our crazy ideas is like, our wastewater plants, as you can imagine, have a lot of land for buffer. Like nobody wants to sell a wastewater plant, right? But we have hundreds of acres around some of our plants. Well, does it make sense is that the highest best use for that land to be farmland or to be really forest? And simply it's only there because of buffer. Could we co-locate a data center that's right next to one of our plants that can use this recycled water? We produce digester gas, like they can use green energy. So does it make sense? Can we get the highest best use? And that's all. So I didn't go into too much detail. I didn't give you the 5-minute version of how we're trying to be a bigger community, positive in our economic development front, the whole idea of co-location. So this is all, I appreciate your question. It's just a very new idea and we'll definitely keep that in mind 100%.
All right, thank you very much for your time, sir. Moving on to water supply planning, Dwayne, Cloe, DEQ, Office of Water Supply.
I was just asked about, getting that. Some of the projects are large, like email to you, but we will have them posted on the website in a couple of days. As well as the video of this meeting.
All right, everybody, commissioners, friends, colleagues, good afternoon. My name is Cloe. I'm the DEQ's Office of Water Supply Manager. I've been asked here today for the second time in 2 years. I'm real happy to be here to present some of our annual water resources reports, highlights, legislation updates. I have with me today Ms. Hannah Summers over here, who is the water supply planning analysis team lead, whose team provides the bulk of what we're going to talk about today. What I'm going to highlight is give you a little bit of an overview of the Office of Water Supply. I'm going to give you kind of a real quick highlights of our state water resources report. And everything in here kind of folds into that report. We'll give you a little bit of an update on the local and regional water supply planning initiative that's underway right now. Talk a little bit about some groundwater projects we have, and finally a little bit about our ground monitoring and assessment. After which I'll be happy to answer any questions. There we go. All right, the Office of Water Supply designs and DEQ within the water planning division. And we are tasked with the management of Virginia surface and groundwater resources. And currently, right now, we have 2 programs. We have the groundwater characterization and monitoring program, which oversees the groundwater, obviously monitoring and characterization portion of the program, looking a lot at wells, groundwater resources, just a lot of really cool things that we're going to take a look at later on. A lot of what Jay had mentioned kind of folds into that. We also have a water supply planning and analysis team, which, among other things, provides support to our permitters for water withdrawals, as well as characterizing the water use within the state and monitoring drought throughout the Commonwealth. At one point in time, years ago, the Office of Water Supply also had permitting folded in with it, but that has changed about the time I came on board, which was about 1.5 years ago. The decision was made to move that over to the permitting side of DEQ. Not that we don't work with them closely now, because we still have a really close relationship with them. But that said, if there are any particular and pointed questions about water permitting, I'll only be able to answer at a high level. So I just want to put it there with that. Our state water resources report is a flagship publication that's produced every October of the year and submitted to the governor and the Virginia General Assembly. And it summarizes the reported water withdrawal for whatever calendar year it is. In this case, we're going to be talking about the 2023 calendar year. It identifies water withdrawal trends and provides an update on the Commonwealth water resources management activities. And last year, we had 1,174 facilities that reported water withdrawals to DEQ. And those reports are either from permitted users or from unpermitted users that withdraw more than 300,000 gallons of water per month throughout either surface or groundwater activities. So some of the categories that are broken down, the report kind of is summarized by ground and surface water, and we look at agriculture, we look at commercial, we look at irrigation, manufacturing, mining, public water supply, and power generation. And again, this is further divided by permitted and unpermitted categories. And you'll see throughout this report, or at least this presentation, we kind of remove power generation from a lot of these drafts, because power generation is so much of a water user in the Commonwealth. If we were to kind of put it in with the other 6 categories, it would drown it out. I think it's on the upwards of what, 75%. Maybe 78% of the water use in the state is for power generation. So here we have minus, in the pie chart, minus, power generation, are a summary of those different categories for 2023. Again, we had 1,174 facilities reporting, over the 2023 timeframe, and withdrawals total 5.26 billion gallons per day. And I always like to kind of frame this, from my previous role at Chesterfield County, with their utilities department. We had a reservoir there, the Swift Creek Reservoir, which was one of the major water supplies. And the Swift Creek Reservoir had a 5.1 billion gallon capacity. So over the course of a year, or over the course of a day, these facilities here reported basically, pulling the amount of water, from either the surface or the ground equal to that reservoir. And I kind of just always kind of, in my mind, is, it's an astounding number. All that said, this total for 2023 was actually 6.1% less than the 5-year average of 5.61 billion gallons per day. And some of that was basically due to the reduction of some of the use of power through the power generation part of it. Now, looking down here at the bottom, excluding power generation, the total withdrawals were only 1.26 billion gallons per day. So you can see that there's a good 4 billion gallons per day that are pulled just from power generation. And when you exclude power generation, the total is a 1.3% increase compared to the 5-year average. And this increase is related to increases in public water supply use, commercial use, and irrigation. Coming out of COVID, there was a lot more push, a lot more folks coming into the Commonwealth, a lot more use for public water, and that is kind of driving this. Some of the irrigation is being driven by the drought that we saw in 2023, again, for commercial use is very similar. I'm going to focus kind of on public water supply withdrawals because they're the bulk of what we have, and they're kind of illustrative of what we have throughout the different categories. There was the public water supply total withdrawals are about 822 million gallons per day. And when we looked at that, it was very similar to the 2022 value. So we've seen an increase over the years, but the last couple of years, it's been pretty static. Then again, this general increase observed during the past 10 years has been related mainly to population growth in the Commonwealth. So to summarize, when you take a look at it, and then just a real quick summary slide from the report. Without power generation, you can see the 2023 withdrawals in million gallons per day. Again, there's that 1,245 billion gallon value. But I want you to kind of look at the total groundwater and total surface water. We're still a very surface water rich and surface water oriented user of water within Virginia. We have the bulk of the withdrawals are from there. Total groundwater is a small fraction of that, although it is very important in some areas because it's the only water asset there is. You can see the percent changes over time compared to the 5-year average. We actually had a decrease of 5% in total groundwater in 2023, but an increase in surface water. Down on power generation, same thing. You see that 8.2% decrease. Again, there's a drive to be better, water wise with power plants in use of their water and to kind of make a cognizant try to reduce some of the use. You can see the surface water is pretty much all of what power generation uses. Very few power generators are using groundwater assets. And here's the trend I talked about in the public water supply needs over the last 10 years. With the exception of the dip in 2020 from COVID, it's been an increase, significantly through the last 10 years. This slide here is showing you the annual water withdrawal, permitted versus unpermitted use. And you can see for you just kind of focus in on some of the different categories, but at the bottom you have a summary of it. So for instance, the annual withdrawal from groundwater, you've got basically a 50-50 in terms of permitted withdrawals versus unpermitted withdrawals. 64 million gallons per day versus 68 million gallons per day. Surface water is a little bit more heavy towards the unpermitted side. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit with some of the initiatives that DEQ got going on now to kind of address this unpermitted total surface water use throughout the state, looking at some of the grandfathered withdrawals. We actually had a committee, which some of y'all in here may be on, to take a look at the grandfathered withdrawals in the state and try to get a good handle on that. Again, total surface water permitted 23% of the about 270 million gallons per day. Water permitting actions in 2023, we saw some permits that were issued, and made some notes here for surface water. Right now, we have 98 surface water permits that we administer, and 15 of those were issued in 2023. For groundwater, we have 345 permits totaling 115 million gallons per day that we're currently administering. There were 91 permits that were issued in 2023. To date, in 2024, we've had 50 groundwater permits issued and 13 surface water permits issued. So they're out there, they're happening, and it's a challenge for our permitting staff to keep up with those. But they do a really good job in the technical analysis and the technical evaluations to ensure that these permits are as solid as possible and are not contributing to depletion of the resource. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and we'll have plenty of time to answer questions at the end. I'm going to talk a little bit about the local and regional water supply planning regulation that's underway right now. This was legislation that was originally born out of the 1999-2000 drought, where we had some of the water supplies in the Commonwealth on the verge of collapse. And the General Assembly at that time had foresight to say, hey, look, we need to do something. So the local and regional water supply planning regulation was born, and that was promulgated in 2005. Regional and local plans were submitted, and at that time it could be a local plan or a regional plan. And I think we ended up with what, like 48 plans throughout the state. These plans ranged from localities, say for instance, Chesterfield County, on up to a regional plan. Like there was a huge one out in the southwestern part of Virginia. So, they had the option. You had the option of planning by yourself, and you had the option of planning together. These plans were submitted and reviewed in the 2008-2013 timeframe and approved, and the first state water resources plan was published in 2015. Now, these were on a 5-year update, so by 2017, 2018, they were rolling around again, and the second state water resources plan was published in 2020. That kind of somewhere in there was a kick to by the General Assembly again and the JLARC to make this let's make this more of a regional plan. The idea was that while localities and regions were doing a great job, the ones in the regions were benefiting the most, and it made sense to to go about, kind of, dividing up the state based on shared water use, based on, existing or proposed, relationships, and by watershed and river basin to go regional. So the local and regional water supply planning regulation was amended. It made effective back in October of this year, so just a couple of months ago. There were a few legislative mandates that were embedded within those, within this regulation. The first was House Bill 542, which detailed this approach as being a river basin approach. It required water supply risks and required a stakeholder involvement component of it that was not as prominent in the previous legislation. In 2022, House Bill 1297 was enacted, and this enabled localities the ability to request reassignment to adjoining regional planning areas if they could provide the rationale to do so. And then finally, in just last year, House Bill 2095 made a distinct Potomac Rivers planning district, a regional planning area for the localities and for the areas that source their water directly from the Potomac River. And this also dictated that the Metro Washington drought plan be followed during times of either drought watch or drought warning. So this is how it was kind of broken up, and I'm going to show you this, and then we'll dive in and take a look at just the Rappahannock River Basin in particular. The amendments to the regulations became effective on October 9th of 2024. Like I said, just 2 months ago. It requires that these localities plan regionally and establish 26 distinct regional planning areas. We are required to have kickoff meetings by April 7th of 2025. And then right now, we are in a push to make contact with the different regional planning areas, the regional planning units, the different localities and cities that are within these areas to get contact information. I think that's due December 8th. And we've been looking to get responses. We've gotten a few so far, quite a bit, but we're still got a long ways to go. We're hoping to get all that suitcase by the end of the year so that we can start these kickoff meetings. We have a guidance document that we've written. Our policy department has it right now and is doing a detailed review of it. There's also limited funding available that we've worked up a draft request for application for funding for the different localities. It's a limited funding. It's only about $462,000 for over a 2-year period. But it's something, and we're hoping it'll give enough oomph to get the process started for those localities that wish to take advantage of that funding. And ultimately, the plans will be due on October 9th, 2029. This is a 5-year horizon. It's a long, slow burn. What we're going to get out of it is hopefully a set of water supply plans that will really showcase what these regional planning areas can do and strengthen some of the existing relationships that some of the counties these counties have with one another. Here are the ones that are specific to the Rappahannock River watershed, going from up in Rappahannock in Madison County all the way down to the Chesapeake Bay. And I'm not gonna read off all the different ones, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 of them that reside either fully or partially within the Rappahannock River watershed. Some of the key requirements of the updated regulation, like I said, and I don't want to be broken record, but a friend of mine always said, memorization is key to repetition is key to memorization. We require that the localities plan regionally. and assigned those planning areas based on river basin. There were the mechanisms, there was, request assignment, reassignment. The new requirement facilitates increased participation in plan development of stakeholders and also with the public. It creates requirements for the identification of water supply risk and strategies to address those risks. Revises the water supply plan development submission and review procedures to align with these requirements, because now there's an entirely different way we're gonna be looking at them. Clarifies some of the roles and responsibilities of DEQ and localities and stakeholders, and again specifies that the state RPA or resource the regional planning areas for the Metro Washington ground region. So next steps. Local governments, water authorities, and PDC's contact information on December 8th. We got that process underway right now. We're gonna be gearing up for these kickoff meetings and visiting every 26 of the regional planning areas in the spring. We'll be funding communication about the, we're gonna be providing funding communication in late 2024, hopefully by the end of the month. Latest by January of how the funding will be done. We'll hopefully finish this guidance document review so we can bring along with us to the to kickoff meetings. And then we wait for some regional plans that will be due on October 9th, 2029. Of course, throughout that time, we'll be providing technical guidance and helping the regionals develop these plans. And soon after the last one submitted on October 9th, 2029, we will begin work on an updated state plan, and that will follow soon after. All right, I'm going to switch gears once again and talk a little bit about our groundwater monitoring network expansion. This came out of a $7.5 million allocation or appropriation from the General Assembly to DEQ a couple of years ago. A very generous appropriation because it's allowed us to do a lot. And it's taken a lot to get to where we are today. Just for getting easements and land use agreements to do some of the drilling that we have underway right now. We contracted with the United States Geological Survey's Water Science Center's research drilling program, which we worked really close with. And we had a couple of things that came about from this. The first is the West Point extensometer, and I think Jay kind of touched on this. But an extensometer is a large scale vertical land motion instrument that can measure subsidence and also potential rebound from the aquifer. It's under final construction right now at West Point and is expected to be operating by the end of the year. It's literally they put a coat of paint on it not too long ago on the instrument table. They've got the rod attached to the different instrumentation, and right now they're waiting for some to get some of the electronics in and just put the final touches on it. But we're real excited about that. It'll be the fourth extensometer in the state of Virginia. We're in the process now of drilling 20 climate response network wells in the fractured rock aquifers that are west of 95. We have 13 of these that have been put into date. Right now, the research drilling unit has started yesterday on well number 14. We're hoping in their hits that they have in the next 3 weeks, they'll be able to get 2 or 3 more of them done. But we anticipate this project being completed in 2025. At which time we're going to roll right into chloride monitoring wells. And these are going to be drilled in the coastal plain aquifers along the bay. We have land use agreements that we're working underway to have those. We have some in place. We have some that we're still working on. And again, we're gonna be beginning these here in 2025 after our climate response network wells go into play. We've actually instrumented up a few of the ones from the climate response network wells with telemetry, and we've started to get data from them. So we're really excited about those. And then the picture here, this is from Rappahannock County, the Washington radio tower site. So I guess my colleague here from Rappahannock County, thanks a bunch for getting us on site there. So I show you this picture again, the regional planning areas, but more importantly, the watershed. And I think there's a laser beam here, yeah. So we have a couple of these climate response network wells that have gone into to the watershed. The one up here at Washington Radio Tower, another one here at the Phelps Wildlife Management Area in Culpeper. You know, a couple of them kind of just right outside the boundary of the watershed. But then down here at Whitestone, we have a chloride well. At least we have an easement down here that we hope to begin drilling on. So long as the research building unit can shoehorn their way into it. So we're hoping to get that one on after we get the climate response network well in play. And also you can see there are also some existing USGS wells that we have within the watershed that we're also keeping track on. Okay, another one of the groundwater initiatives that we have is Senate Joint Resolution 25, which is a mandate to study the groundwater supply in the Commonwealth east of the 95. And we've been making some headway on that as well. It's a 1-year study, and we have many tasks that are in development. The first of them, which has been completed, is the annual model updates, simulation of total versus permitted groundwater withdrawals in the coastal plain and eastern shore that we have every year from Aquaveo. We're going to be using to help this study. We're working to delineate geographic regions of interest, and we've been working with the United States Geological Survey on that. And the important part about that is we're going to use that to conduct what's known as a zone budget analysis and derive relative groundwater availability among those geographic regions of interest. Again, we're going to be using the Aquaveo model and some of the expertise from USGS to do that. We've already been talking with them. We've submitted a couple of scopes of services to the Geological Survey. I'll be meeting with them tomorrow about it. We're really excited. They've made some really impressive products for the North Atlantic coastal plain in general. So we're going to kind of mirror what they've done for the North Atlantic coastal plain and focus on this area in Virginia to provide the General Assembly with the report that we're going to be developing here. We're also going to be incorporating economic development, population growth into those projections, and we're working on that as well. And then we have a water quality component of it that our DQ staff has been working to compile and analyze the data and trends for it. Again, we have multiple discussions going on with USGS and Aquaveo, and to make sure that we have this product out and it's a first-rate product. Because we're really excited about it. It's giving us a good opportunity to dig into some of the data and to look at some of what's going on in the Virginia coastal plain. I'm going to shift one more time and talk a little bit about drought assessment and response. The last couple of years have been really dry. And with the exception of a small amount of time from about late February to early May, the Commonwealth's been in some sort of drought advisory, ever since I came on board. That's been a year and a half. We follow the drought assessment response plan that was created in 2002. We use the drought monitoring task force as the body by which we make these advisories. We met this morning, as a matter of fact. The drought monitoring task force is comprised of a number of state and federal agencies. And you see all the alphabet soup of acronyms up here, but we've got the Department of Wildlife Resources, the Health Department, Department of Forestry, Agriculture, Consumer Services, Environment, we have Emergency Management, and then we have the National Weather Service, USGS, Corps of Engineers, and USDA. And we meet every other week. We've been meeting on a bi-monthly basis to make determinations. And we meet as conditions required. So when there are no drought conditions based on the U.S. Drought Monitor, we're not meeting, but as soon as something triggers D1 in the Commonwealth, we're in action. Now this is an old map. I just want to show you kind of what the 13 drought evaluation regions look like. This is back from the 23rd of July. And this is kind of the worst it was this year. But we have 3 stages of advisory, and this kind of shows 2 of those. We have a watch condition, and that would be in yellow. Green is everything's okay. We have a warning, which is in that orange. And then if we ever got to it, we would have an emergency, and that would be declared by the governor. And it would have to get pretty bad for that. You'd have to start seeing a lot of water supply issues, reservoirs starting to go dry, those kind of things before we got that way. But there are 4 metrics that we look at. We look at precipitation, groundwater levels, we look at reservoir levels, and we look at stream flow. And those climate response network wells that I mentioned are going to kind of fold into the groundwater aspect of this eventually, and provide us with a little bit more data west of 95, where we don't have as many climate response wells. So those are the different summaries and then the different metrics that we use, and those are things that we look at. Right now, our drought advisory is still in the Shenandoah Valley up in Northern Virginia, and then down along the eastern part of the state. We understand there's still some dry areas kind of internal, but we're really kind of hoping the forecast National Weather Service gave us with some range over the next few weeks will kind of go a long way to kind of at least keep that at a level. And then going into winter, we're in good shape in terms of the leaves are off the trees. We don't have a lot of evapotranspiration. Typically this is where we get into our hydrologic recharge for the year. And then we have some ongoing drought initiatives to improve as well. We have this climate response network expansion. We're seeking a USGS National Groundwater Monitoring Network grant right now to provide money to put instruments on new and existing wells. Those will be like real time, every 15 minutes to let us know what the response is. We have an ongoing hydrologic assessment and research project with Virginia Tech. And we're looking at best available data sets for precipitation, which model precipitation data sets follow what we've seen in the historic record, and how can we use those model precipitation data sets to forecast rainfall in the future. We're seeking out a national integrated drought information systems grant to investigate baseload contributions during low flow. We're working on that, and we've got a deadline next Monday to get that in. So we've been really pushing to get that grant so we can work even closer with Virginia Tech on looking at some of the ability to estimate baseload recharge during low flow periods. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. This photo is from the interior of the exosometer shed at West Point. Showing the borehole that goes 1,420 feet down to bedrock through the Potomac Aquifer. It's a continuous steel rod that comes up. It weighs, I don't know how many times, like 8,000 pounds of steel rod that's hanging on this framework. But we're real excited about getting this up and running because, it's the newest one that we've had in decades and, it's gonna go a long way to helping, characterize, what Jay talked about in terms of the plume, if you would, of recharge when Swift goes fully on board. With that, I'd be happy to answer your question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the kickoff meeting in April.
Yeah.
That's not that far away.
That's not that far away.
So are we going to have the guidance documents and information on what you're going to require for that kickoff meeting as far as the plan goes, or is that just more of an explanation for the program? Is that?
Hannah, you wanna field that question? Because Hannah's team is working on this right now.
Yes, you're absolutely right. April is right around the corner and that's also the deadline. So we'll be hosting those meetings, even sooner than April, probably February, March. The way that the competing deadlines of the regulation amendments versus our guidance and that review process, we almost certainly won't have the full guidance document ready for distribution by the time of kickoff meetings. However, the kickoff meeting is intended to be more of a, okay, let's get everybody in the room and everybody on the same page so that we can start the development process. It is in no way intended to be the last conversation on this. So we anticipate after that April, which is really just the regulatory deadline, that we'll have continued communication with folks, probably additionally, so there is that 5-year development horizon. By April, those folks will just be meeting who else is in their region, who the key players are gonna be for developing the plan. So there's time for everything.
So the kickoff meeting is basically going to be to listen to what you've come up with so far. But you're not gonna require anything from me, from the counties.
No, there's nothing required.
Because you're not gonna have it ready yet.
Well, sure. And plans aren't due until 2029, so there's no requirements of localities to do anything, at this stage except for decide who from each local government is going to represent them in that regional planning unit, which is essentially, it's an informal body, it can be whatever makes sense to each region, but it is the group of folks that will be developing the plan. And so that kickoff meeting is just, getting a sense of who those people are. And they're required to submit that contact information to us, just so when we're setting up those meetings, everyone is included.
Okay, and I will talk to you, I guess I'm trying to figure out if we're going to have a plan given to you and names given to you, but we don't have guidance as to what you want yet.
We won't have the guidance document, but the regulation itself is extensive. So the guidance certainly gives additional details on we're preparing an extensive section on resources that folks could use on data that we will be disseminating to local governments for their use and development of the plan. But the regulation itself, which is effective and available for folks to read through, is very detailed in what's required in the plan. So no one is waiting until those meetings to understand what's required in terms of plan development, if that helps to.
Okay.
Sir, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I was curious, you talked about that extensometer, is that?
Yeah, the extensometer, yes, sir.
It's not, I'm on the record as well.
Yeah, I think that one now.
So one time you talked about rebound, one time you said recharging.
Yeah, rebound.
Are we actually seeing a rebound in the aquifer now, or is it continuing to decline?
And right now, we're not seeing any rebound, from Swift, obviously, right now, we're not, the only rebound that we've seen is from when, I think Jay mentioned it, we kind of, dialed back on some of the users that were, in the area. And then we did see a rebound, but, I'm just saying, with the extensometer, when the SWIFT project comes online with, it'll be a great way of measuring if that is having any impact. And it'll also be a great way of measuring just the impact in general. Because it'll take into account, the way it is, it can measure, and my geologist guys would probably kill me if I pronounce it wrong, this glacial isostatic adjustment. And that is basically when the glaciers were over this area back in, mammoth times, it actually pushed the crust of the earth down. So there's that movement of the bedrock, which it can measure, but it can also measure compaction of the aquifer above it. There's different rods coming up through there. So it's a really neat instrument. When I first heard one, I looked it up online, and extensometers were like little things that people use to do other things with. I had to really dig there. It wasn't a USGS webpage. They have a really great, for this group in general, a really great website devoted to Virginia extensometers that shows the animation of how these work. I had to like watch it like 10 times just to, kind of get the idea. But
And I'm talking east of 95.
Yes.
It's my understanding that we actually may be over allocated in uses in east of 95. I don't know if that's true or not. What steps have you all taken to limit those allocations? And I noticed on Jay's report, he kept using the word over allocation in different spots. I don't know if you had any substantiation for that or not, but is that true? Are we in fact over allocated east of 95 on groundwater withdrawals? And is that part of what you're doing in reeling some of those in?
Right, and that'd be a great question, Sarah, for our permitters. They're the ones that are gonna be able to answer that very accurately. I can say that, from a just a high level planning point of view where we're at, I know DEQ doing its best from the permitting side of things to make sure that the over allocated, that the resource is not over allocated. But I can tell you that I understand from when they dialed back those larger users, back in the 2015, 2016 timeframe, there was definitely a rebound noticed, an increased notice, which was great, awesome stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Brooks.
Yes, thank you. Is PFAS being considered, one of the requirements in this 5-year replan? That seems to be the biggest issue that we're gonna be facing, in Fauquier County.
The plan's mainly a supply plan in terms of actual quantity. I don't know if quality is a part, is it?
Indirectly, so, I'll just stand so folks can see me too. So one of the amendments to the regulation, was to include a risks section to the plan, and so, within each plan, local governments will consider any risks that are relevant to their water supply, as well as potential strategies to mitigate those risks. PFAS is not captured as a specific note in the regulatory language, but there is a kind of catch-all for any other risks to water supply that PFAS would certainly fit within. Other risks like drought are included, sea level rise, things of that nature, the whole figures of categories as well as that, like what other risks they would deem relevant. So I imagine we want a discussion of quality risks, saltwater intrusion is probably heard from others as well, something we might capture.
Right, thank you.
Yes, I don't know if you mentioned this, when I stepped out of the room, but, you said you were going to, unpack unpermitted and the, water withdrawal, unpermitted water withdrawal. And you mentioned grandfathered, water withdrawal. I was trying to figure out what percentage of the unpermitted is the grandfather or is the grandfather amount in the permitted section?
Yeah, and then I was speaking mainly toward the surface water component. If I remember right, it's around 73-74%. I don't have to go back and take a look at the slide, but it's in the bulk of the surface water withdrawals are grandfathered withdrawals. They were in existence at or prior to 1989, where they had a water, like a utility that was in place, and when the different regulations came into play with, for permitting, there was that cutoff made. So what we've done is we've assembled a panel of users who are grandfathered withdrawers. And we're having regular meetings to kind of take a look at what amount of capacity do you need, or what that measure should be, because right now, some of those old grandfather withdrawals, they may be, an allocation that's, if they exercise their full range, say they were allocated like, let's just say 500 million gallons, if they did that, it would preclude anybody from getting a permit upstream. And some of these ones, they're not operating at 500 million gallons, per year, or per day, they're operating at some different levels, so. And there may be constraints with infrastructure, the plant may only be designed for so much, and, so we're looking at some of those, trying to answer some of those questions. To see if, there's any way of better characterizing, the issue. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, sort of, but you could go on. No expiration dates on those grandfathered ones?
Not now, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Bradley, white geologist, was great to work with. Thank you very much.
Oh, awesome, great,
Please
no.
give them our appreciation, but, one, I owned a restaurant for 20 years, and I never understood why I had to send in to the water department my water usage. Now, after selling the restaurant, I have a better idea of what that information is going to. How do you calculate unpermitted water usage?
That is a kind of a thing that's been very difficult to do. I mean, if you don't have a permit and you're less than, the threshold, it's very difficult. And we do have our colleagues at the USGS that have been doing an exhaustive study on domestic groundwater use. And, hopefully, we've been involved with the peer review part of the paper, and hopefully, that will be published here soon, and that'll be something that we're waiting on as well, because it does help out every little bit. So yes, that's a challenge that I've learned, from this job, that, unpermitted and, below the threshold, I don't know, it's kind of hard. A lot of those users are also, superficial aquifer users too, so maybe get some recharge from from rain. Most of the ones that we're looking at are confined, aquifer, or they're having that larger volume.
One other question, with all the data center conversation going on now in different areas of groundwater monitoring, is there any way that when a data center goes live, you'll be able to see in your monitoring whether that data center water usage has impacted any surrounding areas?
That's another good question, because the majority of the data centers that we have in the Commonwealth right now are tied into the public water supply system. So they're not disaggregated in terms of what we look at. We're looking at the public water supply number as well. That would require, going in and mining that data from the different utilities. I know there's a JWAC study coming out on data centers, here, hopefully in the next month or so, that again, we're waiting with, bated breath, so to speak, to kind of roll into some of our work as well.
Can I just add quickly on the data centers too? So there's a long horizon for the water supply plans that are due in 2029, but the data that we provide or that will be to local governments will include more of a dissemination of like top users that are using public water supply. So we anticipate by 2029, we'll have a better picture of like if data centers are the top users in those areas, what they are. We just don't have that information yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Down here, and then we'll jump up to Supervisor Nicholas. Yes, sir.
Just because water is so important to everybody in this room, how come we don't spend a little bit of time talking about it or thinking or looking? Everybody in this room knows where the radiator is on the front of your car.
Right.
And water and a coolant and thing. Why aren't we walking away from these large amounts of water the data centers want? Between the power they're using and water they're using, it looks like there's a better way and a simpler way. And stop pulling so much water out of our rivers and streams. That's all. It just. I know it's gonna cost them $1 more, don't get me wrong, I know that's the whole up. But that Rappahannock River means something like that to me, so does the Potomac and the James and all of them that we should be worried about. Why aren't people recycling the water for these data centers? And I'm serious, I don't have the knowledge to answer that question. That's all. All right.
I wish I had an answer too. And so, but yeah, I mean, certainly, like, I think Jake talked about the purple pipes, recycling some of the water, minimizing, is an important part, or alternative ways of cooling. I know there's some ways of, data centers can do that as well. It's just, yeah, I'm with you, I understand.
Yeah, thank you. So you heard earlier what we faced in Orange County, with no water.
Yes.
Do not use, and we take our water from the Rapidan River.
Yes, sir.
And that's our only source. And the drought back in '02, sort of raised everybody's attention to water supply planning. You illustrated much of the effort that's been accomplished, but in Orange County, they didn't do it. Nothing has been done. So we still have one source of water, the same source that we had back in 2002, and study after study, and still no action. So will there be any priority in the process and the new water supply planning process to say there is no alternate source of water for this area or this region or these regions, and we need to prioritize that over, will there be some sort of priority system, or will that be part of the planning process? Because it's, you think, oh, it's not really that big of a deal, but when 15,000 people go from water to nothing, not a drop, that's a crisis. It's not an incident, it's a crisis. It was a crisis. So I'm just wondering how that's gonna play out in the planning process.
Yep, Hannah, you're on.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I think, one of the reasons the amendments were proposed, and so, in that case, there's regional. So part of that regional requirement, from my understanding, the basis was, okay, in those cases, let's make sure that everyone's coming to the table to talk about more of a regional scale alternative. I want to be careful though to mention that the planning process is separate from like a water allocation or a permitting decision process. So we've gotten that question before of, okay, if everybody comes to the table and we decide, Orange County needs an alternative, that's going to bind everyone to some sort of developing of a new source or, an agreement to a water allocation. That's not the case for this planning process. But what it will provide is the data and hopefully the cooperation from other stakeholders to look at, okay, where there's current use, and the plans also require a look at future use out 30 years. What is that like comparison of current versus future? Where are those areas where future demand is not going to be met by current sources? So that starts the conversation, and then there are also the requirements in the plan to develop narrative for alternatives and also for mitigation of risks. And so I think I mentioned prior that the mitigation of risk, is a completely new section. So while folks may have captured that in the first round of plans, it was not required to be captured. So we're hopeful that that will create more of a meaningful dialogue and maybe actually get some things moving, but it'll be unique to each region, I think.
And I think we have to look at that and appreciate that, because that having that mitigation of risk, the risk could be higher in certain areas for certain reasons, for whatever. And I'm the last person to say, I want the entire Commonwealth to have water. Like, no one should be in a situation where we can't provide safe drinking water for folks and for businesses. But we also, with the influx of data centers, we need to understand that impact over the next 30 years. We simply can't sit here and put our head in the sand and go, well, they're gonna come and we'll just deal with it. We cannot be reactive. And I think one of the great things about this new set of regulations is actually being proactive to understand what our future is so that we can properly plan, design, and build that future. And so I hope that's part of it. It sounds like it will be a pretty integral part of the process.
All right, we've got time for one last question, and we're gonna move on.
Thank you. Quick question. Is there an estimate of how much the regional supply plan would cost? Is there an estimate for that?
You know, there isn't, but I'm sure it's gonna be somewhere between $0 and $1 million, you know, there is not. I wish I could tell you, and certainly the financial burden that's being placed on some of the regional planning areas may be different for the areas that they're in. And hopefully the funding that was given to us to give to the locale, the regional planning areas, you know, maybe that, I'm hoping that will continue. There will be some allocation, in the budget every year for these, at least over the next 5 years to help the localities and the region, help their regional planning area, regional plans.
Our region is just us in Carolina, so
Yeah.
$1 million is a lot to small localities as opposed to bigger localities that might have 4 or 5. And a comment on the purple pipe, we just had draft PER for decommissioning one of our water, wastewater plants. And the quote that was given us for purple pipe was $14 million.
Holy. Wow, maybe I underestimated them.
You just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Mr. Chair, I may have an answer for the twice, the RRBC technical committee met on this. And we had a representative from Northern Virginia who was one of the regions who's
Yeah,
done.
that's right, yeah.
And Norm said that they did theirs in-house and it was $300,000.
Under the previous one.
Under the previous regs, they did the regional approach years ago. So it was $300,000 in-house. That gives just a baseline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cloe, for your time.
Thank you all.
And we will move on to Department of Forestry updates.
This presentation was going to be given to us in September, but there was a little water incident in Rapidan that hijacked our meeting.
Things happen, yeah, it's all.
And Terry, can you stay around long enough?
Well, I certainly know
We
we are
appreciate
on
the
the time clock right now, so I will move through this pretty quickly. Thank you for having me back. I greatly appreciate it. I always like coming to talk about things forestry and forest related, and of course, our Department of Forestry. Ellen asked me to come and talk about 3 different programs to provide an update on these. One is the Sentinel Landscapes, the Virginia Security Corridor was designated in 2023. I updated the commission, I think, multiple times over the last couple of years as we went through that process of getting designated. We have made some progress, so that's one. The second is the Forest Sustainability Fund, which impacts localities utilizing land use taxation and trying to get some of that money back to protect land use taxation. Because we see that as a great way to make sure that we limit the amount of conversion of farms and forests here in Virginia. And then the third is our Hardwood initiative, which is a newer program focused on hardwood management because, well, 80% of Virginia is hardwood. We do a great job managing our pine, and have some great pine resources, but it's time to start looking a little bit more judiciously at our hardwood resources. So with that, I will jump right in. I'm Terry Lasher. I'm the Assistant State Forester with the Department of Forestry.
Down to advances.
That seems backwards, but that's all right. All right, so here's a map of the Virginia Security Corridor. In this process, we've shown this map, I think, multiple times, but we have 2 different corridors here in Virginia, 2 different landscapes. One is the Potomac landscape that is anchored in the north by Quantico, and in the south that is the Tidewater Sentinel landscape. And that one is anchored by Jill Basin and Eustis. Since the designation in 2023, we've been working diligently to develop a implementation plan, getting our partners together, and hiring 2 coordinators. The coordinators are Department of Forestry employees, but they are funded through Department of Defense revenue dollars, so it's basically free to come. So I'm not gonna read all this to you, but basically this is just to reiterate what our goals are for that program and how this meshes with a lot of other programs. The whole idea is to activate a partnership, to give it some sort of ability to function not in silos, but to function together, to leverage different partnerships and dollars to impact not only natural resources management at a landscape scale, but to also look at How do we keep the Department of Defense active here in Virginia? They are a huge part of our economy as well as a part of our defense structure, so it's very important that we retain them. So how do we do that? Well, we're trying to maintain and expand working landscapes here in the Commonwealth. And some of that is to deal with things like coastal resiliency, as you see in line of effort number 2. And the other is to conserve and restore key habitats that benefit water quality. A hot topic for today, because forests are the answer for many of our water quality and quantity needs. So the more forests we have on our landscape, a little bit better our water is in the end game. So we'll move on from goals here. So here's what we've been up to. Over the summer, we hired 2 coordinators. Mary Bennett is our coordinator in the Tidewater area. She came to us from the Elizabeth River Project. And Christopher Moy is our coordinator up in the Potomac. We've established relationships with 13 of the major installations within the landscapes and are building our part of this. Currently, we have 73 different partners. That includes all state, some federal, and of course, all of our military branches. We provided 6 letters of support for grant proposals in and around these landscapes. Most of these are coming in forms of easements. This is not just an easement tool, but it certainly seems to be one of those conservation tools that seem to be the most favored at this time. There are some other grants that are coming around. So far, those 6 letters of support impacts 1,222 acres around different installations and have brought about 8.7 million in funding to the Commonwealth. An update as of yesterday, Fort Walker is partnering with the Conservation Fund. They have a priority area around the A-Cup and their A-Cup priority space. The Hazelwood Farm, which is 339 acres, was awarded some BLCF funding, so the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation funds. And that project was awarded, not done yet, takes a little while to get an easement, but it's coming. And that is about $440,000. And then around Joint Base Land, we used the city of Hampton is pursuing a grant for nature-based solutions to build resilience, and that was almost $1 million in funding. So right up to date, new things happen. So up next, says hosting a kickoff meeting, but we already did that. It was November 7th. We hosted that meeting with all of our partners, or key members, I should say, not all the partners, but some key members, to talk about how we're going to govern this. What is this? So everybody had the same level of expectations of why we selected this project over that project. We wanted to put some things in place, so we're working on that document now. The end game really is for us to begin to start transitioning into that landscape scale. And once this builds in Virginia and we get some really nice wins here, we would like to partner with the landscapes to the north. There's one that was just designated in Pennsylvania. Maryland has a piece of Virginia as well, in the middle Chesapeake, and then to our south is the eastern North Carolina. So we can really start to look at how do we impact large watershed scale projects here in Virginia using DOT money.
And that, just to be clear, that Maryland piece includes a chunk of the northern neck.
That's correct. They came in, snuck in at night and did that. We didn't know about it. Don't worry, we're thinking about how we're gonna take it back. Just kidding. All right, so the Forest Sustainability Fund, as I mentioned, this is a fund that was created to replenish. It's never gonna make any locality whole, I don't believe, but to replenish some of the funds, or at least at its current funding levels, was to take some of those localities that have been participating in the land use taxation program and try to kick money back to them in order to retain it. We don't want them to lose it. Right now, I think there's 75 localities that participate across the Commonwealth in forest land use, and I think another 92 that participate in ag and horticultural land use. So there's a lot of implications there in terms of how much money it would actually take. The funding was provided in 2022, and we had some funding going forward. There was none in 2023, but we do have additional funds for 2024 based upon the biennial budget. So I'll show you that here. 75 localities offer that forest land use taxation. That's 70,000 individual parcels on about 3 million acres. 2023 applicants reported a foregone revenue of $72.5 million. Just to let you know, it was actually funded, I think, at $1 million that first year. So it's basically an ask. The localities ask, if there's money, we try to give them a percentage of what it is that they're asking for. So the proportional distribution of the amount available in that first year was about $15,000 per locality. There is some specifics of how that money can be used and where it can be used. And it's for education and that kind of thing. I'll show you here in just a moment, but here's where the Forest Sustainability Fund, Forest Land Use Taxation, foregone revenue. So if we see the green are counties that submitted, the gray are counties that did not submit. I'm sorry, they don't have land use. The yellow is the no application was submitted. And then you can also see where their needs were. I think this has got the pointer here. So the green is over $1.5 million. The red is 1 to 1.5 million. The orange is 500,000 to $1 million, and 5,000 to 500,000 as you go around. So here in the Rapidan Irrigation Commission, you can see that there's quite a little chunk of need there. So the Forest Sustainability Fund, who is eligible, any local county or city government with forest land use value assessments to apply. You simply just send the notice. I'm sorry, we send the notice. You send your application back, and the information that is required is basically a W-9 for that locality, a copy of their local ordinance that established forest use taxation, and the amount of foregone revenue due to the Forest Land Use Taxation Fund. And the amounts that were funded are here. So 2022 was 1 million. 2023, there was 0, but in 2024, there was 2.5 million allocated to this. And the ask was for 10 million, in the foregone that we saw from 2022 and 2023 was somewhere around 72.5 million each year. Okay, the Hardwood Initiative, lots more information. Again, I'm not going to read all this to you, but basically, 80% of Virginia is privately owned, and 80% of Virginia is also hardwood forest. We need to find ways to get landowners to start managing their hardwoods. It's a very expensive management in comparison to typical pine management. It costs a lot more, and so the return on investment is a lot longer. Pine rotations, from tree going into the ground to final harvest, is about 40 years. You get some of that money halfway through with thinnings and treatments that help grow. Hardwood is not really that way. You're talking more about 120-year rotation. So this is generational types investments. People usually are just harvesting, right? Sometimes they're harvesting for purpose, for good management. Sometimes they need a new barn, so they're gonna go and harvest, right? So there's some things that are happening there, and there's some social economic things that are happening, but there's also just this not enough. There's just not enough cost share programs to help with folks to do it. So basically, for the Hardwood Initiative, what we need to have is people contact their local DOF office. They get a management plan. The Department of Forestry forester okays that plan, and they qualify. And I'll show you what some of these investments are. And these are not huge dollars, but it is enough that it pushes people over into the yes column. We haven't seen a lot of use of this yet, but it is a very new program, just launched about 2 years ago. We have a hardwood forester named Joe Rossetti, who is working on this program for us, with Dean coming. I don't know if any of you have heard of Dean. Dean is a longtime staple at the Department of Forestry and is our forest management program director. So basically, the Hardwood Initiative cost share program provides some cost share to landowners. You can cost share up will be like 75% of the cost, not to exceed these following limits. So the landowner pays 25%, as long as it does not go over this amount here for native or invasive control, crop tree release, $140 an acre, mid-story removals, which should also have some return to the landowner, prescribed burning, which is very much a needed land practice throughout the Commonwealth. Stand marking, which is really good, so that way you know you're not getting high graded when you have a logger come out there and harvest for you. They're only cutting the trees that you've marked to be taken. Timber stand improvements, and of course, there's a 5-acre minimum. So there's also, in concert with this, is a Hardwood Initiative Tax Credit Program. This allows landowners to basically get a tax credit of up to $1,000 for any of the programs or any of the uses that they add into the program, into the cost share program. In order to receive that credit, again, you have to have that management plan, which basically tells you that this is the best practice. They get that management plan approved by their DOF forester. It's verified by the DOF staff that the work was completed and it followed the plan, and then the landowner simply receive a tax credit through their tax payments, excuse me, geez. Other things that you can get this for is using equip. You can use it for the Conservation Stewardship Program, the Virginia Agricultural Cost Share Programs, as well as credit. So funding for this program is committed at $350,000 per year for fiscal year 23, 24, and 25. So there is some funds there. So if you have hardwood, give us a call. That's all I have.
If I may.
Yes.
In FY 23, of that 350,000, how much was claimed?
Not much, because we were lifting the program at that time, right?
But that's the only year you have for right now.
Yes,
Right.
that's right. And our state of the forest report will be coming out in January, and that will have what we use. I want to say it was something less than $10,000. Now, those funds do carry over.
Okay, thank you.
I knew that was.
You saw my next question.
Yeah. Any other questions that are reserved?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all won't do the plan for the landowner. They have to hire a private consultant for that, and then you approve it.
That's for the tax credit, but for the actual management, we can write the management.
We will. Oh.
But because you're using other programs and you want to use some of that you want to get the tax credit, we may not have been involved in those, right? So then we look at it and say, oh, you had a management plan. It was completed. We think this was a great practice. You qualify for the tax incentive.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Seeing none, you're getting off easy. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I know it was fast. So if we have any questions, and Eldon knows how to get in touch with me, I'm just trying to get us coming back up. So thank you.
Next up on the agenda is future meeting dates and locations.
And Mr. Chairman, you see all those, we'll probably be at the Carolyn Community Services Center, next March. For those of you who don't understand how we do the meetings, because I have been actually asked this. In the spring, we hold the meetings in the Middle Basin, and there are 5 jurisdictions, so once every 5 years, you're the host. In the summer, we're in the Lower Basin, the time to be in the Lower Basin, and between those 5 jurisdictions. So Middlesex is up in June. And then the fall meeting, as we did in September, we're in the Upper Basin, and we'll be in Culpeper. And I don't see David on, so I'll be working with him on that one. And that's how it works. But we always hold the December meeting here, so Caroline gets 2 bites at the apple. So,
I have good places to meet.
that's it on the meeting.
All right, and then last agenda item is identification of potential future agenda items for March 26th.
And that's really up to y'all, but given the discussions I've heard today, I want to ask 2 questions. JLARC is presenting their data center study, and it's supposed to be broad, cover all the issues, I don't know how, but it's supposed to be broad, on the 9th of December. Do you want me to ask JLARC staff if they'd be willing to come to the meeting in Carolina in March to do a reprise of that?
Yes.
Kind of anticipated that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I know that at the end of last meeting, we talked about these meetings and data center with Senator Stewart and Mr. Heisen, we always agree on data center, but one of the things that I'm feeling and I'm hearing is that we were having the conversations, but we're not digging deep. And there's no thread through all of these meetings, is water, water, water. I don't know where the regulations are, who's running the overarching. Instead of us having county doing our own thing, we need that regional, like, dig deep. And we're all using water, and we just need to agree to understand it together so that we could safeguard each other's counties.
Agreed.
So just having piecemeal, and I'll leave that up to you all, Chairman.
So
And I'll
how we, because it is something that's ongoing conversations, you know, we've discussed it even here today, groundwater, data centers and the aquifer.
We need a
prioritizing, and so.
plan approach to phase and have the discussions that are relevant to, especially those individuals that are having data centers before it comes in.
I will have a follow-up conversation with Mr. James and the chair of the committee and see what we can actually have on the agenda for next meeting. Might even be something that us electeds need to get our heads together and maybe submit it for a study of some sort. So I'll reach out to my colleagues as well. Mr. Gross.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what other counties have done? We have an ordinance that prohibits data centers from using our municipal water. They're required to recycle water. And the one data center that I know details on, they use the equivalent of about 4 households for their toilets. That's it. And it's, you know, yes, they require more energy to cool because they're using air cooling or they're using recycled water cooling, but it solves the water problem completely. And I'm just wondering, have others explored that?
Yeah, that's what we require on ours, is a closed loop chill system.
Yeah.
Which is an average of about $800 or $900, 800 and, wait a minute, I can look it up, 893 gallons a day for their overall water uses, flushing, all
Yeah.
washing hands.
I guess we're the only potential unusual because the one, it is not a data center, but could be. It owns the water permit, the water intake permit.
We got all.
King George, yeah. 825 gallons is what one company here did a comparison, said, compared to average household, 236 gallons water a day. A day's in 8,000. It's a small.
Yeah, 800 gallons is nothing. It's,
Yeah, 8,334 gallons, I think is what that said. A sheet's 3,885 gallons, so at the data center for a day of operation averages 825 gallons per day. As long as you make them use the new closed loop system.
But what Dr. Young said is vital because if you look at it, they're coming down like a Christmas tree. And you look at the rivers and the rivers flow down too. And what impacts is already approved up here, flows down to everyone. So we do have to look at it holistically.
The general will be key for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In line with what you all have discussed. And seems to be the whole point of a commission, which this is to examine issues and potentially come up with recommendations for the General Assembly that they think are needed or necessary for a particular area. And I don't know how much of that we've done.
Well, that was what happened with the solar.
And you all actually sent a bill to the
No,
general.
there was no bill, but each of the patrons of solar bills, since that report has come out, I have met with and gone over that report and those recommendations.
Well, that's all fine and well, but it seems to me the point of a commission should be to examine these issues, and this is the Rappahannock River Basin Commission. So I think we should be looking at particular issues that affect the Rappahannock River and all those people who depend on it, around it, and coming up with recommendations. Maybe, I don't know if everybody has access to that JLOC report, but if they don't, Eldon, maybe you could send it to the members of the commission and they could look at it when it comes out on the 9th.
It'll be available on the 9th, yeah.
I just don't know if they know how to get it. And maybe if they don't, you could help them do it.
We will send out, two things. One, we'll send out tomorrow, probably afternoon, how to view that meeting on the 9th. Number one, and then, all of the JLR reports are posted on their website, so we'll follow up with that as well.
You and I know that. I just don't know that everybody else does. And sometimes you need to help folks to get good participation in something. So I'm just suggesting that people don't know, maybe you can help them find it. And then maybe we want to talk about some of those issues in the report, and they may help us come up with ideas that we need to flesh out, discuss, and come up with recommendations.
Senator Stewart, to your point and Dr. Jones' point, we meet quarterly. And I think that we can have some one-off conversations, especially us electeds, identifying what areas that we actually can submit legislation, bring that to the commission for some healthy discussion, dialogue, and then really have a good game plan of what we're gonna take back to the General Assembly. Probably too late now for January, but you know, for 26, we can definitely have a game plan. And if we're starting that process now, as a like to saying, hey, let's get ahead of this, and help with the commission going forward. That's kind of my thoughts of putting our heads together before the next meeting.
I've already got my things. I'm just not sharing. I don't want the lobbyists to see me.
Last question, I swear. Is it too late for us to get some legislative action initiated on this one question? I don't think we need to wait for a study, you know, for the JLR report to say statewide, everybody who's upstream, everybody who was subject to drought the last 2 years. I think, you know, if we could say any data centers going in those areas would need to either use recycled water or get some validation from their local water supply that they're not going to impact it.
Sure. So pre-filing has already closed for next session. That doesn't mean that we can't file something, but a lot, you know, we all have a limited amount of bills we can file, and a lot of our dockets are already full. I had one that I was trying to hand off to Senator Duran. She's like, I'm full. And so I don't know if Senator Stewart has any openings, but there is.
No, I've got like 50 bills and I only carry 20.
Okay.
So it is kind of late, but if things are always in flux and they're fluid. And so if something changes on my docket, I'm more than happy to look at trying to get something drafted and go from there. But again, I've already got my 15 bill limit, so it's got a 20 bill limit this year, right? And so.
I mean, the problem is with things like that, not that that's not a good idea, you're stepping on the local boards of supervisors authority. And the General Assembly, I know, but they typically are reluctant to do that. And you often see bills where they want to, you're going to see a solar push this year to do a permit by rule, much like North Carolina does on small projects. And I don't know if it's going to pass or not, but it takes away local authority.
Right.
And we don't like to take away local authority. I tend to believe that the supervisors do a better job governing their area because they know it.
You're loath to take away.
Oh,
If
no,
it's meant, you know,
and we don't like it taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's,
Um,
we feel localities that know their communities best and.
The challenge, I think, becomes when you have localities who are taking action that impacts their neighboring localities.
Understood.
So I think we all need to be protected from one another to the extent that we're not always thinking of our neighbors.
There may be some measures.
It's starting
Put in
to, I
place
feel
to
like
do
we're having conversations like we're out in the west right now in terms of water, like Arizona, Colorado, that's starting to be.
Last 2 years, it really hit us hard.
Yeah, it really
It's
has.
been scary.
Yeah, but here we are. So I 100%, I appreciate where you're coming from on that. I still think that the JLR, we need to see this, so we pay a lot of money and they're not easy to get a JLR study for these reasons.
No, they're very good.
Yeah, and, you know, I think rightfully so, because this combo, we make an investment, all of us make an investment in that, those, in that staff to come in from a non-partisan perspective and give us some good answers, hopefully, that are usable.
Yeah.
I think.
All right.
Data.
Yeah, it'll have the data that we need. And with that being said, Mr. James.
One other question. We talked about the groundwater study that will be complete shortly.
It's gonna be, next year, it's due November, 30th of 2025.
I misheard you. I was thinking it was, okay. Down the road.
All right.
Guys, never mind. Sure.
Any other topics for next meeting?
I just have one question. I'm thinking, Mr. Chair, we have, I know we've talked in previous meetings about with this solar and we've got the hardwood. Have we, forgive me if I don't know this, but have we mapped out our, and the Commonwealth, I feel like I've heard some different entities that have discussed this about our prime spaces and what we are mandated to do as a general assembly for our solar and how that is competing with our efforts for hardwood and tree canopy across the state. Maybe some of you've been.
I'm not trying to do with your eyes.
What I'm trying to say is that I know in the conservation law, these are two competing different interests. We've got solar and that requires clear, and then we've got the tree canopy. And so we have these parallel discussions about one.
So I think you're gonna see push, and personally, I think solar's fine in the right spot on poor land where you don't see it.
Yeah.
Don't take up the good ag land, things like that. And I think you'll see a push probably in that direction. But I think you'll also see a permit by rule with those sorts of qualifications. Where if it's, certain megawatt, and I'm not good at that, but if it's, when it's 5 megawatts, I don't know, 100 acres and it's not high quality agricultural land and it's in a certain area, I think you're gonna see something.
So there's a couple of bills that have passed in the last year. Yeah, HB.
Look at Weber.
Yes, that's HB 206 that looked at 50 acres of contiguous forest, or I think it's 10 acres of prime agricultural soils. That report is being worked on now. It's due identified this spring of 2025.
It's still in a final draft.
Has it been extended or?
I don't think it was, I thought it was due in December as well.
It was, they just haven't been able to get it done because there was so much contention among the players involved.
The stakeholders can't agree on an answer. So they just, they're meeting and they're leaving because they can't decide on it.
This newest process was better than the previous process. There was one that resulted in like a 800-page document that basically came to no conclusions. Then HB 206 came and said, well, let's define what prime agricultural soils are. And let's look at a specific frame of how much forest is gonna be impacted by. And so from that, there was a little bit more consensus. We've been involved with the process from the beginning. We've started looking at least a draft report, as of, I want to say it was the beginning of November, we met with DEQ and other state agencies to kind of talk about where that report is and some of the recommendations. There is a mitigation component within that, which basically, and there's a sliding scale of ratios of how much, if you impact 50 acres of forest, how much are you gonna have to mitigate somewhere else?
Yeah.
And so now the discussions are really about where do you do the mitigation?
That you read my mind, yes, that I feel in our local government committees, we get a little bit salty behind,
Yeah.
when we hear certain districts versus across the Commonwealth.
Yeah, now DEQ does provide on their website a renewable energy projects mapper. So you can go and look at it and see where there is either a notice of intent, a project in construction, or a project that is actually active in producing electricity.
Okay.
They were supposedly doing an update to where all those facilities were and how much land that impacted in terms of ag and forestry. And there was one that was done, I want to say in 2021, is that about right? And now there was an update. I have not seen that update yet, but you can go and at least look and see where these projects are. There's the forest canopy conservation bill that was passed last year. It has a deadline of 2026, December 1, 2026. And that one is for the Department of Forestry to work on. We have not begun work on that because we are closing out after 2026. And that was the biomass impacts and life cycle analysis and harvesting video and keys for biomass and things. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but in January, I believe, we are going to be hiring that person to do the conservation plan. That conservation plan will have to address where active soils are, good soils, prime soils, and where our canopies are. There's gonna have to be some recommendations that come from that.
Mr. Chairman, the issue is this, the Clean Economy Act was adopted in, we were at the Science Museum, whatever year that was. I didn't vote for it, and I think it is unattainable, it's unrealistic, and everybody agrees with that, but it ain't going away. And there's not going to be the political will to change that. There may be the political will to amend it.
Yeah.
And there is so much solar energy required to be adopted under that plan. If the localities don't do it themselves, the makeup of the General Assembly is going to make them do it. I'm just telling you that's the way it's going to be. And I'm not going to support it. Most of us in this room, I don't think will support it. But that's what's going to happen.
It's the continued push that we have seen in the General Assembly is that we will remove those protections and you will have as municipalities to make those decisions and you'll be mandated to do it. We fight and those get vetoed. Just know, and I do think it's relevant to when we're talking about water quality and you know, a lot of this is very much connected. So since I've lived in it for my, like in my 4th session, I continue to kind of ask these questions, where are we in terms of mapping out the Commonwealth, and yet at the same time, sort of running away from it and not waiting until we get more of the relevant data and how we're going to map out these two competing interests between tree canopy and solar. So just not. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason solar panels cannot be placed on the top of data centers that are already under?
No reason they cannot be, but that's a private contractor and government doesn't force private businesses to do certain things.
It also may be a height enforcement issue on the building.
Yeah.
So most localities have, you can only go this high.
So high.
Those are 2 of the 3 issues.
They want,
You got it.
they want square footage to put the
Video.
chains in versus.
We have the generators also for the data centers themselves on the tops.
Yeah.
So
Many of the data centers put their backup generators on the top. You can't. So you can't do both.
Any other topics for next meeting? Hearing none, we have a motion to adjourn. It's adjourned.